Ahoy hoy! I am Planarwalk, and welcome to the Aftershow. Did anyone see the debate? I hope you did. So, let me just switch to thing, and I don't think we've got a lot of people watching us right now. This is why I don't do things quite this late, because not a lot of people watch. I probably should have advertised myself on James' show, but what can you do? And let me just bring that up. So anyone's welcome to join if they want to. I am currently on Discord. I think there should be a link in the description. Let me know how all the levels are and all that. So I see a couple of things in the chat. What are they talking about? Talking about like 33. Oh, the likes. 33% is always good. Remember that. One person says that they're going to watch the debate live, but Team Skeptic and Red's rhetoric ruined those plans. Okay. Oh yeah. They did do something. What were they doing? I'm pretty sure they'd still be live, wouldn't they? Or have they finished? But yeah, that was a very interesting debate, I must say. I managed to round DX. Wait, why is my chat not showing? I've got two chats on here, and one of them is like ahead of everything. Is Flat Earth Aussie Jesus is gone for now, but he might show back up. I did say that he could come on. I am gonna if anyone wants to come on to the stream, you're more than welcome to. Link is in the description for our team and Reds are all done now. If you want to come onto the stream, you're more than welcome to come on Discord and have a chat about where I went wrong in the debate, what I could have done better. I'm always up for improvement. I know that a few people were saying that Flat Earth Aussie Jesus won the debate. So, maybe I did terrible, maybe I did great, who knows. I'm pretty sure I got him on a few points though. Problem was sometimes I wanted to go, okay, I want to go to this particular point. Like there's one point that I was wanting to get to, and every time I tried to go to it, he'd bring up a point and I'd be like, okay, well, let's deal with this point. Because he did there were two points that he misunderstood. Right, there was the Earth blocking small portion of light from the sun. Right, he thought that the whole sky would be illuminated. And then he thought that things couldn't disappear bottom up when you get to... Oh, there he is. And we've got Flat Earth Aussie Jesus with us. Ahoy hoy.
Ahoy hoy.
So yeah, I was just saying... What?
Am I in here?
Oh yeah, you're in the debate. Oh, not the debate, the after show. Yeah.
Oh, I can't even see it. It's not showing up on the...
Oh well, it takes a while to show up on the live stream. If you're watching the live stream. What was everyone's?
Oh, okay. You're Wolfie 3010, are you?
Oh yeah. I. That's basically a joke. Have you heard of McFlatty?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you've Oh yeah, you said something about him freezing an ant when he froze an ant with cold moonlight, didn't you?
yeah, he was trolling the place, some shop, that McFlatty guy.
Yeah, but basically he said that I'm Wolfie 6020's son, and he said that you should call me Wolfie 3010 because that's half of Wolfie 6020.
I've actually always called him Woofy, like with the double O instead of the L. Just Woofy because he's a dog.
Oh, okay.
1080 because he's toxic, one of the worst toxins you can imagine. Which I see they're doing a lot of damage with over in New Zealand at the moment.
So when it comes,
birds and so on.
So when it comes to 1080 is one of the better options here. It's and I know that people will disagree, and it's actually something that I've been thinking of making a video on for a while now. But 1080 is definitely better than the alternatives for managing predators.
And why is that?
Because New Zealand doesn't have a lot of native mammals. Like, we've only got one native mammal, and that's a bat.
Right.
So, generally 1080 is effective, or most effective, against mammals.
Yeah, but you know how disgustingly it kills them.
Well, when it's the option between either a whole lot of native wildlife goes extinct, or we get rid of some predators.
From what I'm saying, what's that other one? It's not the kiwi, it's the other bird that's almost a flightless bird.
Are you talking about the Kia or something else?
The Kia, yeah. Apparently, it's like they did one dump of 1080 in one place, and they came up with like dozens, if not hundreds, of dead Kias.
Yeah, there are a couple of birds which will eat the 1080, mostly the Kia. But another thing you got to consider is how people are trying to manage it to make it more targeted towards things like stoats and just trying to think of. I think there's stoats and possums are a couple of the main things that they're trying to get. So what they do is they try and make it less presentable to Kia, and it's a constant refining process. So they're trying to take the pellets and make it so that stoats and I think it's stoat. I keep on forgetting the other one. Stoats and possums. That's right. And they try and make it so that they're more likely to eat it than other animals, or at least more than Kia. And there's a heaps of things that go into it. Like there's the color, there's the shape, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but still, can I ask? Off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure what a stoat is. Is that like a kind of weasel or parrot or something?
Yeah, I think it is. One person's saying that they can't.
Introduced by people, and they're trying to find an easy solution. Then maybe they should be looking at. Yeah.
Well,
Is there a high unemployment in New Zealand, for example? Like, couldn't they be employing people to be out there trapping them and giving them a bonus for everyone they trap, or something like that, rather than just spreading poison all over the place, which could affect everything willy-nilly?
So, when it comes to trapping, it does take. There's a lot of bushland in New Zealand, and so to get traps into some of the dense bushland, you'd have to hack your way through some very dense bush, and that would be very difficult.
Yeah, I know. I've been to New Zealand a couple of times myself, and
I just realised something.
The debate before, I actually had a Maori partner for some time. That's how I managed to go over there and know a little bit about all our time differences and so on. And yeah, from what I can understand, it's a small nation compared to Australia. I think you could probably fit some 24 odd New Zealands into the space that Australia takes up. And while I admit, yes, there's a lot of bushland, just exactly what damage are these foreign invaders that we introduced actually doing that somehow more harmful than what the white man is doing to try and control them? So
the problem is that there's a lot of native species in New Zealand which are close to being extinct. Like, I think there's some of the species, I think there's one species of bird down Southland that is there's only 22 of them left.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when you've got things, when you've got foreign invaders, you got them killing birds, you've got them eating the eggs, which makes it very. When you've got them eating the eggs, that's very, very bad, because it means that the birds can't even go anywhere in life to be able to repopulate or
we
anything.
have a lot of ground nesting birds like that in Australia too, and we do take care of them and stuff. But if you think if there's only 22 pairs left, then actually that would easily be able to be monitored and set traps up around, outside their local perimeter to take care of.
But setting traps outside the local,
but
setting traps outside the local perimeter wouldn't help at all, because because it's actually inside the bushland that they reside in, which is where the predators are getting to.
But at the same time, if it's known that there's 22 breeding pairs left, that's not that hard to monitor.
Well, you'd have to have 24...
3 people around the clock. Yeah, 3 people per nesting site. That's creating jobs.
I mean, 3...
As opposed to the cost of putting all this poison into the environment that could potentially affect the young'uns anyway.
You do realise that... I just want to clarify, you do realise that 1080 is biodegradable, right?
From what I've heard about it, it's pretty nasty. I haven't really gone hugely into it, but from what I have seen, it's the most disgusting, terrible way to kill anything, even if it's a predator. And quite often, more often than not, it ends up being in people's dogs or something.
Oh, and Dread Lindworm says the weasels can dig up from under the nests, so that would make it very difficult to monitor, even if you had a whole lot of people there monitoring the situation. It wouldn't, like, when something digs up from under the nests to eat the birds, to eat the eggs. That's no amount of people is going to be able to stop that. The best option is to try and counteract that with something else they can eat, which would kill them.
Okay, and so why are there only 22 nesting pairs left then? Is this so effective? They've been putting 1080 out for like decades.
Because there's people that are so against it because they don't realise that 1080 is the best option. Like, as people that I know that are trappers have said, it's not the thing that they'd rather, it's just that it's the best option. So they'd rather there be something else for a more clean way of killing predators, but there isn't. The best option that they've got is 1080. So you got to go with the best option. It's like but
if you've got any collateral damage, as we've seen, I just don't think that is the best option at all. There should be 0 collateral damage.
What collateral?
Like all those Kias and so forth, like hundreds of them killed in a particular area where they've had a recent drop. Things like that. To me, that's just unacceptable. There should be 0 collateral damage, or there has to be a better way of doing it.
Well, here's a problem with the anti-1080 crowd, and they try to conflate inflate the numbers. Like, they'll say something like, "Oh, I saw a whole lot of they'll say something like, "Oh, I saw a whole lot of dead birds around the area where they dropped 1080," and it's like, okay, did you take any pictures of that? And they'll say something like, no, and it's like, oh, so did your phone just suddenly stop working when you got there, was it? And you'll find that a lot of them don't have evidence for it. That's not to say that 1080 might not kill other things. I just don't think it's as prominent as they say it is. And then you've got to also test to make sure that it is test to make sure it's 1080, and like, if you're trying to save, I think that the bykill from 1080 is far less than the amount of kill from the predators. So if a predator is allowed to reproduce, that creates a lot more deaths than one death by 1080 for a bird.
Yeah. Look. I know there's no easy solution to this. I'm not going to jump onto any bandwagon and say anybody's more right than anybody else. But in my experience, nature always find a way of balancing between predator and prey.
Well,
once a certain number of prey disappear, or then the predators have got nothing to eat, so they'll disappear, and so they always balance out eventually. But to see unprecedented numbers of a particular dead bird after a particular drop.
Yeah, I just want to say something.
In my experience, I spend okay.
So one person's asking, what's a 1080? So 1080 is a poison that's used for pest control, quite common in New Zealand. And one person said sodium fluoroacetate, and I think that might be the chemical composition. It's gotten a lot of people it's gotten a lot of backlash because I think they used it in America and it had devastating effects over in America. And my position on it has always been, you should never use it in a place like America. You should only use it in places like New Zealand where you're bound to get less bykill from the dropping of it. So yeah,
I just can't agree in any way, shape, or form that dropping poison is a way to control nature that we've already interfered with in other ways, and to try and improve on it. It's just, to me, it's just adding, fuel to the fire. You're not actually adding water to the fire. You have to find a better way. The better way is to introduce other species that the predators can live off. I don't know.
That can be terrible, though. Every time that something like that has been done, you live in New South Wales, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was New South Wales that has the cane toad infestation.
It's up in the northern parts where I live and beyond, up towards Queensland and beyond. Yeah, it's mostly a warm weather place. It's not in the majority of New South Wales, no.
Yeah, whenever someone introduces something new to an area, it always has devastating effects. Like you might say, let's introduce this thing that they can live off. But it could be that this new thing that you introduced goes ahead and is like, everything here is nice and tasty, let's feed off it all. And then you find that the stoats and ferrets and weasels, they've got a whole lot more food. And it's like, we've got a whole lot more food. Let's start eating all this new food. And you've got far more stoats and weasels than you had in the first place. And it's just like, holy shit, you've introduced a whole lot of new things which are terrible. Introducing anything is terrible.
Well, then my idea then is to introduce this new food source in a controlled environment where it's like an enclosed area, so that once these animals enter into it, they can't get back out. And therefore, you've got them trapped where you can easily dispose of them humanely, rather than this slow 24 to 48 hour poisoning where they bleed to death in huge, great pain. You could do that in a way, like just create an enclosure, take a 20-meter area, fence it off, breed some rabbits inside it, though they can't get away, and so the stoats are attracted to that.
Well,
so once they're in there, they can't escape.
That would be incredibly difficult to do. First, you've got to try and get every single stoat into this enclosed area, and that's you're never going to be able to do that. There's going to be some which just won't go after the food source that you introduced, and secondly, you got to make sure that this food source.
Couldn't you say the same for your 1080 though? Couldn't you say the same, that there's going to be a certain number who won't go for that poisonous shit because they're too smart? They can smell it and they're not going to go for it anyway. So
I believe
is creating a higher number of poison resistant and poison scared creatures who are going to just get more and more immune to it, to the point you're creating a more and more toxic environment in the first place.
Dread Lindworm just said, mind if I come in? And sure, you can come in. As I said, there's a link to, or you can just join the stream chat and you'll instantly be in there, be in here. It's on Discord. And Jeff Roberts says, someone catch me up, what are they talking about? We're talking about 1080, and I'm arguing that 1080 is the best solution we've got for dealing with pests in New Zealand, and Flat Earth Aussie Jesus disagrees with that.
I 100% disagree. I think it's the most disgusting way of killing an animal you could imagine, And if you really wanted to kill an animal, you'd find a way of attracting it through something that it desires and finding a way of disposing of it humanely.
Hello, Dread.
Okay, so
I think you've got your mic turned down a bit.
hang on, I'll see if I can turn it up.
But yeah, I'll just say a few things. So yeah, we're talking about 1080, and 1080, as I was mentioned earlier, is a poison which is it's toxic to mammals. I'm not sure how toxic it is to birds, but some birds go after it and do die, so it can be dangerous to birds.
Look, I know of people who've had their dogs, their beloved dogs. They live out in the bush. And of course, you can't contain a dog when you live out in the bush. And so they might wander a bit into somebody else's property. And when the neighbour is using 1080 poison to control wild dogs, of course, it's going to attract this person's pet dog. And to watch these dogs die in their arms, they said it's the most disgusting thing they've ever seen. It takes like 24 to 48 hours to watch this dog die, the most insufferable death you could imagine. So if this is also happening to the wildlife, whether or not you agree they should exist there,
Hold on, is 1080...
whether or not their natives are also suffering as a side effect of it, it is just wrong. You cannot do that.
Is 1080 freely available? Or can you buy 1080 in New Zealand? I
don't think you can necessarily buy it, but if you're an animal, an official national parks and wildlife sort of person, you can just disperse it freely as you like. But from what I've heard in New Zealand, they're just dropping it out of bloody planes or helicopters, just dropping it all over the place willy-nilly. That's why killing so many of these keas, these natural native birds that are endangered, and making them suffer the same disgusting, horrible death. You can't imagine what it's like.
It's better to. I think that it's much better to. If your goal here, right, is to have endangered species survive, then the best way to do that is to kill the predators in some way, or the pests in some way.
Yeah, but it's not okay to kill the endangered species at the same time, mate.
Okay, I've got this turned up as loud as I can.
Okay, I'll turn you up on my end so that that should help.
I can hear him just fine. Yeah.
The basic problem with trying to introduce something to act as a food source for the invasive species is that it outcompetes the native population that you're trying to protect and pushes them out of their ecological niche. So, say you introduced a bird to use as a food source for the stoats, it might well drive the other species out of existence anyway. You suggested putting rabbits in this compound. Rabbits can dig under whatever fence you put there. They're notorious for escaping, and that's actually part of what's caused problems in Australia. Rabbits were introduced to be farmed in controlled, enclosed spaces, and they just dug out. And
actually, they were introduced as a hunting species because the English love to bloody hunt the fox. So they introduced the fox as well, and they introduced the rabbit as something for the fox to bloody chase. So I know a little bit about how it works in Australia. Yeah.
Okay, I've got slightly different information on that. I was told when I studied up on it that they were introduced as a farmed species initially, and then foxes were another problem.
No, they were just a hunting thing for the rich and elite who brought over all the convicts, and while they were bored and doing nothing else, they could go off on their fox hunts like they used to do in England.
Okay, well, fair enough. I may have been misinformed because it was second-hand. But it doesn't...
It's the same thing everywhere you go. Like, it's the same in New Zealand. The reason they introduced certain species is simply because the rich and the elite wanted something to hunt in their pastime, and they couldn't see any further, online ecological effects of introducing a species that wasn't native to a region, such as bringing the possum over from Australia. It was just terrible what's done to New Zealand. But the possum in Australia,
hardly a hunting species.
Well, they were used to hunt rabbits, actually. So
Well, you could use. I suppose you could use a stoat to like bring in stoats or possums to try and cull populations. Like in some cases, they have tried to introduce a species to cull populations of other species that they thought might have been dangerous. So, for example, the cane toad was introduced because they had introduced another invasive species.
I believe
the
that was
cane
the
beetle, because they're going to sugar cane, and they found that in the quarantine situation where they gave them nothing but cane beetles to eat, they ate the cane beetles. When they introduced them in Australia, so there's plenty of other things to eat except cane beetles, they left the cane beetles alone and started eating everything else.
Yeah,
that's a prime example of why introducing another species to try and drive out an invasive species just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying to drive it out. I'm saying to use it as a trap species. Like you've already got chickens in New Zealand, for example. So if you create a large enclosure full of chickens and you create paths where stoats can introduce themselves under those fences to get into those enclosures, then you've got an enclosed example where you can shoot them or do whatever you have to do that is quite quick and easy.
The problem is stoats are incredibly good at getting out of any enclosure you can put them in. They can bite through wire. They can dig under fences. They're fairly, it's very, very difficult to contain a stoat that wants to leave.
But if you had then, say, like a steel enclosure type of trap that can capture them live, or otherwise capture them by a steel trap around their leg, they're not going to leave that. Well, and then you can dispose of them far more humanely than you can by what doing this willy-nilly 1080 poison will do, which can affect multiple other species as collateral damage. It's just, to me, the collateral damage is what you have to eliminate.
There's also the possibility of dragging native species into this compound and catching them in the same traps, which, if you're grabbing them by the leg, is going to break legs on species that you want to keep.
Yeah, but as Planer was just saying, that there are very few native species who are predators to these mammals in the first place.
No, not that are predators to the mammals, that are predators to the birds.
But I don't even think we were talking about the birds. The birds are the ones also being killed by this poison that's been dropped.
Well, the case is that the poison kills less birds than these predators do. You want to try and get rid of the predators, and the predators are killing way more of these birds than any of the poisoners, so dropping the poison is doing far more good than it is doing harm.
I'd like to think that's true, but I just haven't seen any evidence for that.
And also, another thing to keep in mind is that every form of pest control has bykill. Every form. Like if you want,
well, that's not good enough for me. Then it's just not good enough.
Well, then should we just not have? Should we just not use any pest control and let all these birds be killed by pests?
No. Well, as I'm saying, there has to be better methods, and the trouble is that most of these methods are all about being as cheap as you possibly can, and not even thinking about the fact that maybe we could actually employ people, because that's what the government is there to be doing, is to distribute the money and the wealth towards these people and employ them to get out there and actually do it by hand, rather than by poison.
So you're doing this by hand, so you've got these birds trying to nest, and you've got them continually being disturbed by humans.
Well, you can create a boundary around them that's a good enough distance away that doesn't affect them.
That needs to go effectively down to bedrock in order to stop the stoats and stuff being able to tunnel under it.
I don't know enough about these stouts, but I know around, say, for example, where I live, we have these things called the pied oyster catchers. They're fairly rare and endangered beach bird that you often see them walking around in pairs, and they nest on the ground. And of course, where people let their dogs go in, they're going to eat the eggs. You've got all sorts of predators. But what you do then is you observe these natural environments where they exist, where they're nesting, and then you create these boundaries, buffer zones, a few hundred metres around them, and you don't let anything in. And the only way you can do that is by having physical human people patrolling it. I mean, you could do it.
That's not going to work, though.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the species that the stoats are eating here. Is it a flighted species?
Some of them.
Does it fly?
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Right, because putting a compound up isn't going to protect a species that can fly. Because they'll just fly away, nest elsewhere, and they're then vulnerable again.
Well, it's not as simple as that. You can't just nest elsewhere once you've laid your eggs. That's pretty much what you're going to provide for the season. No.
You set the compound up. The next year, the birds fly off and nest in the middle of the bush.
Mm-hmm.
At which point you've got to locate them, build a new compound around them that goes down to a depth that the stoats can't dig under. And bear in mind, stoats and ferrets and the like can get through holes that are 4-5 centimetres in diameter. So a hole that size they can get through. It's putting a barrier up that's effective against them is impractical.
So you're saying that willy-nilly dropping random, very poisonous baits around that anything else could possibly also eat is a better solution?
I'm saying that there are delivery methods that can stop other species that cannot get through that size gap from accessing the baits.
Well, that's fine. I'm all well and good if you want to put these baits inside something only accessible to them. That's my whole point. That's what I'm talking about, setting up, certain areas that might be a trap area with some sacrifice animals like chickens or whatever, rabbits, that will attract these vermin. And once you've trapped them in there, you've got a better chance of exterminating them, as opposed to just willy-nilly poisoning the whole entire environment for like thousands and thousands of hectares around and getting all sorts of collateral damage that you don't know what you're going to be killing. The most horrible bits might be.
The other thing is that trapping is employed in addition, but some terrains too rugged or dangerous to trap, at which point baiting is one of the few options that there is.
Well, I still think that nature is just going to take its course. Again, we go back to the cane toad, like in Australia, as you were talking about. Eventually, like now, I don't see anywhere near the same number of cane toads as what I used to see 15 to 20 years ago. You used to see them all around the place, hopping around. Every time it rained, there'd be cane toads everywhere, and people would be going out with their golf clubs and just flogging them around and that sort of stuff.
You do why
nasty, but these days you're lucky if you see 1 or 2 cane toads because that nature has taken its course.
You do know why that is, though, don't you? Like
there is no effective method of poisoning the cane toad. It's not because they were poisoning them.
Well,
it's because the predators have gotten wise to them. They've stopped eating them as they are. They've learned how to pick around their poison cells, and we're also getting wise to methods that we can fence off the waterways just with natural long grasses that they can't hop over.
One of the reasons for the cane toad being seen in fewer numbers, they've basically eaten a lot of the things that they can prey on.
And that's the point that I was going to get to.
That's nature taking care of itself. That's exactly what I'm saying.
They've utterly destroyed entire native species.
No, they haven't. Do you live in Australia? Do you live in a cane toad area?
No, however, I'm capable of doing research.
Well, I do.
That points out that at least one species, Varanus mertensi, has been wiped out to the stage where there were only 2 of them in 2006. So that's a
Rightio.
dead species.
So you haven't actually, in the last couple of days, driven over a cane toad that you've seen on the road, sitting there waiting to be demolished by the wheels of your car, as we do every day. Gotcha.
So yeah, we can look at the ecological impacts of invasive cane toads, and I haven't seen this website, so it may have some species that I'm not sure what this is going to say. So let's see what it has here. Okay, it says that cane toads were brought to Australia in 1935 and released into northeastern Queensland. They have spread westwards and southwards. Concerned about toads' impact on wildlife spawn predictions that most native species encountering toads would be severely affected and thus decline in abundance. Recent research is revealing a more complex picture. Toads do indeed cause precipitous population declines of over 80% in some large bodied predator species due to lethal poisoning when predators attempt to eat toads. However, populations of smaller predator species are unaffected. Some individuals are fatally poisoned, but most survive because small toads contain far less toxin than larger adult toads and learn to avoid toads thereafter. Most Australian birds and rodents have inherited a tolerance of toad poison from Asian ancestors, and that's not affected. Even for heavily impacted predators, populations might eventually recover. Simplistic predictions on the ecological impact of cane toads in Australia have not been supported by field studies. Indirect impacts of toads often outweigh direct effects. For example, the abundance of native frogs appear to be unaffected by cane toads because of negative impacts. Frogs being eaten by toads, poisoned by toads, competing with toads are balanced by positive impacts. Toads reducing abundance of frog predators. Some native species predicted to be vulnerable to toads have become more common since toad invasion, or some native snake species, presumably because of the disappearance of predatory goannas. In summary, the impacts of invaders may be complex and difficult to predict. Doesn't talk much about the toad, what the toad eats though. Unfortunately.
Yeah, apparently they do eat a lot of our native species, especially small reptiles, a lot of our lizards and so forth, even our frogs. But it seems to be creating a bit of a balance. As I was saying all along, is nature will always find a balance.
Sure.
Learn to deal with this new predatory species.
It's a balance that's lost multiple native species. Wait,
we haven't lost anything.
There's been native species in New Zealand that have gone extinct due to invasive predators.
You could also say that due to the invasive white man. Before the Pākehā come over to New Zealand, none of those things were going extinct, were they? So
true. That's because. Well, actually, there were some creatures that did go extinct due to humans arriving. In general, like the Haast eagle, for example, and the moa. But when it comes to these things, it's best we can do is manage. Here's the thing: if all white people left New Zealand, you'd still have these invasive species, and you'd probably actually have far less people to try and manage these invasive species. So it's best to the best thing that we can do is try to manage these invasive species while we still can.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying to try and wind back the clock. I'm just saying that these things happen. They have always happened. And nature itself is always going to find its own balance so long as we stop interfering and say, well, the Pākehās are throwing around all this highly toxic poisons around, thinking they're doing the right thing. They're interfering with nature's course, and that shouldn't be done. I mean, you just have to leave things to their own devices, and if some things go extinct, okay, they go extinct. I'm sorry, that's just the way of it. But while you're causing excess suffering with highly toxic substances, deliberately doing it, deliberately spreading them out, then I cannot ever agree with that.
But that's not necessarily the case, though.
It is. It is
Just-
absolutely the case.
No, it's not, because when you've got species that are invasive, they can decimate populations. I think there's actually some trees in New Zealand that there's only 7 trees left because of invasive species have destroyed it. You've also got far-reaching ecological impacts because the ecosystem can be
something you think.
What?
Something you think is caused by something you can't even say.
Well, you've...
And if that tree went extinct, then obviously wouldn't the predator also go extinct? So it will defeat its own purpose, mate. Huh?
Well, there'll be other things that would be eaten by the predator as well, not just trees. Trees is just one of the... trees would just be one of the food sources, or one of the things that would be affected.
Yeah, but once they're all gone, then that's obviously going to, in its own right, eliminate the predator, won't it?
I mean, dropping a nuclear bomb on the Earth, dropping heaps of tons of nuclear bombs on the Earth is going to kill all the predators, but we're not going to do that, are we?
No, obviously not. But, you're trying to drop more bombs before you've even had a chance to let nature take its own course.
The thing is, you might be willing to allow these species to go extinct, but the governments and the world organisations that want to preserve endangered species aren't. So unless you can persuade them to just give up, it's a lost cause, just let nature take its course, never mind preserving these creatures that we've caused to be at risk of extinction by introducing these invasive species.
Okay, well, if these species are so endangered, then you could easily collect breeding pairs and breed them in captivity in a place where they are protected.
Captivity.
Sorry?
Not all species breed well in captivity.
No, well, I'm saying in captivity in an environment which virtually mimics their natural environment. If you're capable of doing that, if you're really prepared, if it's that important to you to save these rare and endangered species, to create an environment large enough that mimics close enough to them where they won't have any predators, it'll be far cheaper than going and killing all the predators.
Where do you set up this protected environment that none of these predators are in?
It's not that hard to set up, say, a very, very large, bird cage environment, something like that. It's not that difficult.
In order to set this caged environment up, you have to, the amount of development and checking that none of the invasive species is within that boundary is enormous, and it's impractical to do.
Also, do you want...
Well, no. You can also collect DNA samples. And the DNA sample can be cloned. We do have cloning technology, believe it or not. I know most people don't want to think that we do, but if it's that important to you to preserve a particular species that you think is going to become extinct, you can collect that DNA and you will be able to clone it and you will be able to re-release it in this utopian future where you've gotten rid of all the predators that you think exist.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, how many species do you think are at risk of extinction in New Zealand?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I honestly don't think any are. I don't think it's possible for anything to go extinct.
I mean, there are...
Many times we think there's something that's gone extinct. We find examples of them 100 years later, sometimes 500,000 years later, like the coelacanth fish, for example.
I mean, there's a lot more species. There's a lot more species that have gone extinct than species that we're finding.
Let's start with the mammoth and the dodo, shall we? Don't see any of them around.
Well, that's right, but do we know they even existed?
Yes.
Yes.
And if we do, then how has that impacted our ability to exist And what, at the end of the day, does it really matter? You know, I understand it's great to try and preserve species by all means. I'm all for that. But does it
all
matter?
you're concerned about is preserving the human species, we could kill 90% of the other species on the planet. We don't actually
not
need
that
them.
concerned about preserving the human species, to be honest. But what I see is what's happening with this 1080 poisoning. They don't give a fuck about the human experience. They just give a fuck about a few endangered species who they don't really even care about. I mean, what does it matter?
How many species do you think are endangered by predators?
So far as I know, it's only like a few bird species, like the flightless kiwi.
Okay, give a number. Give a number. Like, just ballpark number. Ballpark guess.
3.
3. Okay, you are way off the mark there. The Department of Conservation has identified over 2,700 native species that are at risk of extinction.
Uh-huh.
That's way different to 3. That's like...
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I still ask, what does it matter? What does it really matter? How many species have gone extinct over the billions of years since existence occurred? Probably billions. Were you back there fighting for them and trying to poison the predators who were taking them off? No. But you're here now trying to make this tiny, insignificant dot of causing the maximum harm you possibly can towards something that doesn't really even matter at the end of the day.
So that is a good question, and like the reason why we try and preserve species is because it's to do with there is a certain level of balance in nature due to evolution, right? And one of the problems that you can get is if you kill a whole lot of species by introducing a pest, or if you introduce large sudden changes within a certain ecosystem, then what happens is things can get screwed up pretty fast. And the problem is when you're on timescales of only 100 years, then species don't have enough time to change in order to combat whatever is happening. So you basically have mass extinctions within populations.
Yeah, but then there's always going to be something else to come in and fill that niche. That's just how nature works. Nature abhors a void, and so if there is a void, something will come and fill it.
Only get replaced.
And that is basically the survival of the fittest, isn't it? It's always survival.
You only get replacement species come in the moderately short term of hundreds, thousands of years, if there is a sufficient amount of the species that are there survive.
Yeah, and that's why humans are currently the predominant species of predators on the Earth at this particular stage in time.
However, if you let invasive species wipe out most of the native species in the biological web for the area, you can cause an entire ecological collapse where there's basically almost nothing left in existence in that area.
That never happens. It never happens, because what happens then is once you reach that particular point, the tipping point, as you call it, where the dominant species has nothing to survive off, they start dying off, and then the other species come and fill the void.
Not necessarily.
Only if you haven't already done enough damage to them that there's massively reduced biodiversity.
There might be less biodiversity, yeah, sure. Maybe you might get more yabbies or something start to overtake the nation for a little while, but as soon as you start eating yabbies again, the humans can live off that, then next thing you know, okay, we've got more kangaroos, and so we'll start eating kangaroos. It's a constant flux. There's never ever going to be one predominant species that will dominate, because as soon as they do dominate too much, they kill themselves off by lack of ability to survive. It's not that difficult.
Were you going to say something, Dread? You're just trying to work out how to explain it to him.
I'm trying to work out how to phrase it. While I'm thinking, go for it. Go for it.
So the way that I'd explain it would be, there's a certain level at which a population is an extreme risk of going extinct, and if you just say you get down below 10 individuals in a species, if there's 10 individuals of a species, that species is probably going to go extinct, because especially if you've got a lot of predators coming in. Like, one of the problems with a lot of predators coming in is that, especially if the species is really abundant at a time, is that species could be in different areas, and when a whole lot of predators come in, sure, you may have like 10 individuals of that species, but it doesn't necessarily mean that these individuals of a species are going to run into each other to be able to repopulate the species. So it does. Just because a predator doesn't kill every single individual within a species, it doesn't mean that it's going to. It doesn't mean that the species would be able to rebound, even if the predators did die off. And in a place like New Zealand, there's 2,700 native species that are at risk of extinction. I mean, because there are predators that will probably have most of these species as a food source, you're not going to have the predators going extinct anytime soon unless they manage to kill most of these species. And even a rebound in the species could result in predators that are still around from having a rebound too, thus being able to finish off the rest of that particular species.
Well, what you're saying is it's never in a predator's interest to kill off the majority of their prey, is it? That's how it works. You selectively cull what you need and you want to use to eat at that time, but you make sure you leave a lot of breeding species of the particular food you like to eat.
But predators don't have that cognitive capacity to be able to do that.
Well, you could talk to the Australian Aborigines. They've been on this nation here for about 100,000 years, and I can see most of their food sources are still going good and strong.
Drid wanted to say something, by the way.
Yes, I've worked out how I was wanting to phrase it. What you can get is that your introduced predator eats sufficient of a prey animal that would eat a particular type of plant, that there is effectively no control over that plant growing. It then outcompetes other plants in the area and drives other species to be marginalised and possibly go extinct because their habitat is being taken over by the plant that's no longer being controlled. Because you've lost the creature that would normally eat that plant, it's not got anything that is able to deal with it in the short term. You can then end up with that basically dominating everything and permanently changing the environment of the area, or possibly even the whole country. If that plant overgrows and becomes to a point where it's leaving lots of dead wood around and so on, you can then get situations where you've got effectively uncontrollable fires. Or you can get situations where that plant cover dies off because it's too successful. Which I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but in the short term, it's grown so much that it's taken all the nutrients that it would normally use, and then it dies off, leaving you with much depleted bare hillside. It's not as simple always as something will just grow into the niche that was formerly filled, because that niche can cease to exist.
So can you explain how something that is growing and flourishing becomes bare hillside?
Yeah, sure. If you have a plant that uptakes lots of nitrogen from the soil and it grows rampantly for 10, 15 years, it can suck out effectively pretty much all the nitrogen in the soil. Then, because it requires a large amount of nitrogen in the soil, the next generations starve and die back.
So you're talking about a very, very small enclosed system here, not something as big as the Earth.
No, we've had it where farming techniques have devastated entire sections of hillside when they weren't handled correctly. We've had introduced species of plants wipe out hillsides because they've been too successful and they've ruined the natural progression of plants.
So you're saying a farming technique means that mankind has deliberately introduced it back again and again and again?
No.
As opposed to letting nature take care of itself.
No. I'm saying that it was particularly notable when it was done as a farming technique.
Yeah.
Because we had a large area that was being paid attention to and then suddenly effectively lost fertility. But the same thing has been seen to happen naturally at the edges of carefully balanced ecosystems.
At the edges?
Yes. You get it along the edge of desert type climates sometimes, where fertile soil becomes less fertile soil, becomes poor soil, because something's overcompeted in the area.
The weather system hasn't allowed moisture to come in and let the microbes do their thing in the soil.
Sometimes, and also you
Sounds
can
like
get
a pretty extreme environment.
It can be, or it can be something as simple as cover that would normally hold soil to an area. It's weakened by whatever's happened, and it's washed off the hillside.
Yeah, and washed off, as you say, washed off by physical rainfall. That's what happens.
Yes, but it can happen as a result of the native species to the area being changed as a result of an introduction of something that would seem completely unrelated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in other words, the hand of mankind. Exactly what we see. And all around.
Yeah, but
we should be smart enough to try and correct these things now that we know that this can happen. We act intelligence. We are
exactly. No, exactly.
Of the land.
That's the thing. Yeah. That's where the use of these poisons comes in. It's an attempt to correct.
Oh, no. Don't say the use of these poisons. We've got to do the opposite of the poisons. You've got to heal. heal.
I mean, the poisons help.
It's an attempt to control the amount of the introduced species so that it doesn't damage the native ecosystem any further.
They will take care of themselves. All you have to do is introduce enough food sources for the things that will naturally be abundant, and the predator species they might live on the fringes, but they're not going to be the dominant species as so long as you are looking after the species that you care to take care for.
And then you need to make sure that whatever you're introducing doesn't compete with the species that you're wanting to protect, and further put pressure on it.
Yeah, I agree, but you're not going to put further pressure on it if you're creating a better environment for the things you are taking care of.
So one of the issues, though, is, as you said, when we introduce a species, we get problems. Like, do you think that introducing a new species is going to suddenly fix the problems that we've had from introducing other species all these years? Like, it seems that every time we introduce a new species, we get problems. So wouldn't the best option be to not introduce a new species?
No, absolutely not. Use the existing species to control the local environment. The things that normally thrive there, that belong there, that are native there, create the conditions that suit them, and eventually, they'll be abundant enough that
the problem.
manage the pest.
But in order to do that, you've got to stop them being killed off by the invasive species before they can grow up to a full size. So before they can regrow the population.
You don't do that by poisoning everything in sight. You just don't do it.
Well, hold up. What other options do you have? Do you have any other options, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus? Like any
poisoning?
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, just create the right environments. If you've got an abundant number of people, human beings on the ground, out there every day looking after these environments, getting these protected species who you want to look after, they will get used to you being around, so long as you're not interfering with them. You're not going too close to them. They'll soon realise, these people are sort of helping us. The predator species are scared of us. They'll be keeping away.
Both species are scared of us.
Yeah, but the thing is, we're not there. We're just dropping poison and hoping that's going to do the trick. We're not actually putting people on the ground.
But getting people onto the ground, never mind the fact that a lot of the bushland that a lot of these native species are in is is too dense for humans to go into. But, I mean, both, not only predators will be scared of humans, but the birds or the species that we're trying to save will be scared of humans. We're not fucking Dr. Dolittle.
Well, I think you're overestimating or underestimating the ability of the intelligence of these species that you're thinking you're trying to protect. Because from my experience, when I go around these protected bird areas, which we have plenty of around where I live, they're quite used to humans walking around, because it's exactly like when you see cows in a field. Sometimes you'll see these birds right next to the cows, even sometimes hopping right on the cow's back, because as soon as they realise that they're not a predatory species, they will quite happily learn to interact with you and be around you and not feel afraid from you, because you're not there to kill them and eat them. But so long as they see us as a predatory species wanting to kill and eat them, of course they're going to keep their distance. So the more they become familiar with you, they're not stupid. They will soon adapt and say, okay, these human people, they're here to help us, or they're here to coexist with us.
I mean,
they won't stop running from us.
How many breeding seasons do you expect that to take for them to get acclimatized to humans?
Well, I've seen it in my own lifetime. I'm 48 years old at the moment, and from what I've seen, I've been able to walk past these pied oyster catchers on the beach even since I was 15 years old.
So okay, call it, 30 years to get them used to it? 20 years to get them used to it?
I'd say they've always been used to it, because as long as you don't present a threat, then you'll never be a threat. So I'd say it's already done.
I mean, what factors...
And stop presenting this vibe from your body that animals are very highly aware of, that says, this person wants to kill and eat me.
Hold up,
so full of dead animals.
What factors do you think make you seem like a threat to animals? What factors?
The factor, I think, is basically what you're consuming in your diet.
Wait, what?
We're so detached from our reality because of what we eat that we aren't aware that the animal world, and by that I go to the bird world, insect world, and the fish world, all the other species of animals, is they can tell straight away by your vibration that your physical body's emanating by what you eat, because you are what you eat. And so if you are something that wants to just consume them...
A physical vibration.
I think I'm having an aneurysm.
No. How would we measure?
So are you somebody that generally likes to dine on the flesh of a dead animal, like a piece of
irrelevant
flesh from a dead cow? No, it is totally irrelevant.
How
is what we're
do
talking
we
about.
detect this vibration that you say exists? What
I
frequency?
am trying to answer you, but you're telling me it's irrelevant. It is relevant. That is how you detect it. Do you eat the flesh of dead animals?
That is irrelevant to how we detect it.
No, it is not. It is the answer to your question. Answer my question. Do you eat the flesh of dead animals? Just answer that.
I do not see how that is relevant to how we detect.
Because that is where the vibration comes from. You are what you eat.
It's a vibration. What frequency is it? Is it light? Is it sound? What form of energy is it?
If you are consumed with death, then these animals who are highly attuned to living in the environment which we live upon, they will detect that. So if you look like somebody who just wants to eat them without any thought about their well-being, then they will know that.
The important thing is death, is it, here?
Absolutely.
Because if you eat a plant, the plant dies. So it's still death.
No, it doesn't. You are missing the point. A plant and an animal are two different entities.
Yes. Yes, they are. But you still kill a plant to eat it.
You do not have to kill a plant to eat the fruit from it.
You don't have to eat the fruit, but if you're eating most plants, you do kill them in the process.
Yeah, and you can also cut the very top off a carrot and still plant it and grow another carrot. It's not dead. You try and do that with a cow, you want to cut the head off a cow and plant that and grow another cow, you got another thing coming. That's the difference in vibration. And this is the thing that the natural world, all these other animals are picking up on.
So, okay, it's a vibration. Fine. What sort of vibration? Is it light? Is it heat? Is it sound? How would I detect it?
There's definitely some form of light, because you lose your light if you're dead.
Brilliant. What frequency?
You want to kill somebody? How would I know what frequency is? I'm not a person sitting there with a frequency meter measuring all this sort of stuff. I'm just telling you how it is.
No, you're saying it exists.
Yeah.
So if it exists, you have evidence of this that can be measured empirically.
Perhaps it could be measured empirically if that's what you're concerned about. I'm not concerned about with measuring it empirically. I'm concerned with living in the natural real world and being able to communicate with the living real world around me, and they pick up on my vibration because I don't consume and fill my entire body full of death.
Okay, I've got an idea.
Okay, you have to prove it exists before it can be taken seriously.
I have an idea though. One thing that we could do, like, I'm pretty sure that if we were to get like a vegan and a meat eater, and we were to have them go and have the vegan one day, I think birds are still going to be scared of the vegan, probably same amount as they are scared of the meat eater. We could probably repeat this with like a whole lot of meat eaters and a whole lot of vegans.
It just depends on the personal vibration of the person, whether they're a vegan or not, and how much full of the living energy that they choose to consume. But I'd be happy to participate in such an experiment.
Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult to get this underway, but like do you have any like studies that would confirm this? Has anyone?
It's not really possible. What I've got is my personal experience, personal anecdotes, is that even sometimes when I'm at work, I'm doing traffic control at the moment, for example, and I'm standing in the middle of nowhere, and I start hearing the birds talking to one another. And so what I do is I start trying to mimic them. And the next thing you know, they're talking back to me. And I'm going like, I'm talking backwards and forwards with these birds, just whistling, trying to mimic them. Well, I know I don't even come close to how well they mimic their sounds, but we have a communication thing going.
I
don't think most people have that experience.
And equally anecdotally, I've had similar experiences with crows over here, where I've been able to call them down by making similar noises to them.
Which sort of birds?
Crows. Large
Crows.
black scavenger bird, basically.
Yeah, I know what crows are. We have them here.
Yeah, I couldn't remember whether they're also a Southern Hemisphere species, because I know there's some of our birds don't match up.
I think they were introduced from the inner
I mean, I can
planar Earth. But,
I can literally show you that I have had a conversation with a kitten. Like, that doesn't mean that I'll just share it here. So people on Discord both people should be able to see it. I've had this.
I actually believe you, Planar. I believe you. I think that's actually really cool. We can literally talk with the animals.
I mean, this is when this is back when my diet mostly consisted of meat.
Like a cat. Cats are obligate carnivores.
Like, just because I've had a conversation with a kitten doesn't mean that I'm actually communicating with it. It just means that like I'm making a sound and it's responding to that sound. Like, I don't know what the kitten's thinking. It's probably thinking like "fuck off."
hey, but Planar, am I not making a sound, and are you not responding to my sound?
I am, but I know
I'm not actually telling you to fuck off.
But we're communicating in a common language. Me and the cat, like, I don't know what the cat was saying. Like, could have been trying to tell me to fuck off, for all I know. But it's.
I'm thinking of saying, yeah, I'd like some of that. I'm an animal communicator. I've been around animals long enough. I know how it works.
It could be that the birds were being like, stop doing what we're doing. This is our thing, It seems like you're extrapolating a little bit too much.
My son was actually quite young. I don't know, he was only like 7 or something. And he told me one time, because I owned a pet shop back then, so I had animals all around me. And we had 8 dogs, 8 cats, guinea pig, rabbits, the whole works in our place. And anyway, one day I'm sitting out the front, and there's these little birds. We call them minor birds, or noisy miners. They're a particular type of bird. And you start saying, "Oh, the bird just said, oh look, there's a cat." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Oh, there's the cat, swoop." And all of a sudden the bird swooped. And so he was able to read their language. And a couple of weeks later, I had a friend around, and I said, "Hey, Jack, tell this guy about the conversation you had about the bird." And instead of just telling that 5-second snippet he said, he went into a 2-minute conversation. And he told me exactly what the birds were saying the whole time in English language. Like, the birds obviously don't speak English, but he was saying, "Oh, yeah." And eventually, of course, when the cat came around, they go, "Oh, there's the cat swoop." And these birds would actually swoop at the cat to try and tell them to piss off. And I was just looking at my friend, and he was just gobsmacked. He goes, "That's just bullshit." How can you possibly know that? And it's just like, well, he was just tuned in to the natural language of the natural animals around us, and that was his life. He'd grown up around it.
I'd have to
knew how to speak.
I'd have to see evidence of this. Honestly, I think a lot of testing could be done, because the problem with anecdotal evidence is that it doesn't take into account other variables. So it could be that this person, after repetition of this happening enough times, that this guy just knew what was going to happen.
This is just my young kid, my young son, 7 years old. He was just telling it from a completely innocent point of view. He knew exactly what the birds were saying in relationship to the position where the cats were. He just knew it. So it was just second knowledge. He didn't have to second think it. He was just telling it as pure and innocently as it can possibly come from a child.
Like, could it be that it's just something that's been that continues to happen? So every time it does happen, you know what's going to happen. Like,
not really. I mean, it happens every now and then, but it wasn't that familiar. It was just one of those, basically a one-off thing that he was able to then describe in great detail. And me and my friend were just looking at each other going, wow, how can he possibly know this stuff? And as the kids get older, they sort of lose that ability.
But there's things called patterns. Like, patterns...
Of course.
Yeah, like,
that's what language is. Language is a pattern.
Yeah, so there could be other patterns that that this kid picked up on and was like, oh, this thing happens. And kids can attribute things to all kinds of things. Like, I used to attribute the presents under the tree to Santa Claus. Doesn't mean that Santa Claus exists, but there was a pattern there that I had falsely attributed.
Yeah, but that's nowhere near as precise as a specific moment in time where we're watching one single event unfold, where a cat is coming out of the house and these birds are swarming around because these birds are very clued on, and they're saying, okay, here's the cat, there's the cat, where's the cat, there's the cat, okay, swoop. And then they swoop.
Hang on. Were they actually saying that in English, or was it alarm calls from the birds?
Yeah, in alarm calls, absolutely. And that's
right.
And it's down to the human to interpret these sounds to put it into a language we can understand. And a child, in their innocence, is able to do that because they're not actually hearing it in the English language as we're trained to do. They're hearing it in its reality, and he's able to interpret it then into a way to put it into words that we can understand.
It's very possible and very easy to observe alarm calls and behaviours and be able to read those.
Yeah, good. I agree. And that is exactly what we're doing.
However, communicating back to the creatures, taking it back to what was being said earlier, is a lot more difficult because they don't read us as well.
Yeah, you see, I know what a cat is thinking when it goes. I know that it's basically telling me fuck off, you know. And when a cat says meow, it might be that it's being like, I want food or something like that. There's a number of things that it could mean, right? But we do know that there are, as I said, like when a cat says, I know that means fuck off, but I don't need it to be I don't need to be tuned into, cat speak to know what that means. It's just something that I can easily identify.
Exactly, because these are very obviously observable languages that leave no room for error.
I mean, it does leave room for
very subtle things. The very subtle things like the bird song, the birds speak.
It does leave room for
birds make at different times.
It does leave room for error, though.
Well,
like when the cat meows at me, it could be that it's hungry. It could be like a number of things. Like,
yeah. So, but have you been listening, say, for example, the last 20 years to the subtle nuances of the kookaburra call and learning how the different calls they make at the end of each day are describing up and down the coast, the entire Australian mainland, how they're describing what sort of food they found that day and what they expect to find tomorrow.
I don't think.
How do you know that these birds are communicating?
How do you know they're describing what food they've found? How do you know that it's not something else?
Well, they're describing a lot of things because they go on to quite a long speech, for want of a better word, every time that they make their call at the end of the day. And I've listened to my Aboriginal brothers and sisters who know this sort of thing, and they tell us that this is what they're doing. They're broadcasting up and down on this Kookaburra Highway. What's going on? This is like, we had our broadcast news back in the day. This is their broadcast news going on all the time, every single day.
But
it's been going on for far longer. Just because we don't comprehend it because we're ignorant humans doesn't mean it's not going on. And it's not just the kookaburras. That's just one example. There's all manner of things.
You're ascribing a specific meaning to what they're saying.
Prescribing a non-specific meaning. I'm just saying that's one of the things that they're broadcasting. They might be broadcasting all sorts of other things I don't understand, like the weather, what they predict for tomorrow, how their children are doing, all sorts of things, you know. But it's all in there.
How do you know any of that is in there if you can't understand it? How do you know it's not simply them showing off to each other, or part of a long and involved partnering display?
I'm not saying that I know, but I'm saying that on an intuitive level, it feels right to me.
You do realise that intuition doesn't necessarily mean that it is right, you know?
Of course.
Of course. Just because intuitively you think you know that something is going to happen, like, just say, easy examples like in a plot of a movie, it's like, oh, intuitively this is gonna happen, but then something completely different happens. You know, just because something's intuitive doesn't mean that it's correct. I don't know why you'd use intuition as a way to verify that you can understand what things are saying.
Yeah, okay, but the natural world that we live upon is not a prescripted movie. It is unfolding according to natural patterns that you can observe, and the more time you spend out listening and observing and being a part of it, you just sort of know intuitively that this is what they're doing. And then when you hear it from a higher source, such as I suggested, the Australian Aboriginals who've been here for far longer than we've been, and when they say that this is what they're doing, this is how they're communicating up and down the coast, then that gives much more credence to what I already intuitively know and say, wow, yeah, I agree.
I mean,
that's still anecdotal, and the plural of anecdote is not evidence.
But can you give me proof of anything that is not anecdotal? Just name one thing that you can prove without anecdotal evidence. One thing.
Sure.
Just anything.
Things always fall towards the nearest massive object when released.
That's not true. I can drop a mountain down the side of a marble down the side of a mountain, and it will still fall down without going towards the mountain, which is much more massive.
The nearest. There is a movement towards the mountain, but the dominant effect there is down towards the planet.
No, it just drops straight down. There's nothing you can prove, nothing. Okay, if I want to use that word prove, and I ask you to prove a single thing, you will not be able to prove a damn thing. All you can do is say, my best speculative belief at this stage, without being able to debunk, is this. You cannot prove anything.
I mean, well, here's the thing that science doesn't deal in proof, right? Science deals in evidence, and when there's enough, here's a problem with conversing with laymen, because when it comes to laymen, laymen will often use proof, right? You know, like, I've proven they'll say something like, I've proven that you are guilty of stealing the cookie from the cookie jar, right? But in reality, what they mean is they've got sufficient evidence to believe that you stole the cookie from the cookie jar. And I want my cookie, by the way, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus. But...
Alright, I'll go bake one for you.
In all seriousness, essentially what we mean when we say that we've proven something is that there's sufficient evidence to to believe that this is what occurs. So when but by saying that, oh,
keep fighting the good fight. Klairuhnz is an idiot.
I don't think you heard that, but someone just gave a super chat. But yeah, like what we mean is we mean that.
I just responded to someone.
What we mean is we mean that there's a. Oh, shit, I lost my train of thought. There's sufficient evidence.
I think we were talking about cookies, weren't we?
No, I was basically using that as a small joke. But when I drop
I think it's...
What was that? You can continue.
Go on, sorry. What I was going to say is I think what you're looking for here is that there are different standards
Yep.
that count as proof depending on what you're talking about and who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Proof in a court of law is very, very different to scientific proof.
Yeah. And
which
also
is generally in the negative.
And also
proof is beyond reasonable doubt. And that's what it comes down to, is reasonable doubt. If you can prove something beyond reasonable doubt, then you probably have a sufficient case to say, yes, something is such. But if you do not have reasonable doubt, then you have no proof. And basically what it boils down to is there is no proof of anything, whether it be globe, flat, or anything, apart from the fact that we see water always finds its level, and that's proof that Earth is flat.
I wouldn't say that's proof.
Except there isn't a... That's difficult because level and flat are two different concepts.
Only for a glober, not for a realist.
Well, they are
realist,
two different
level
concepts.
And flat are the same thing.
My wall is flat. It is not level.
Yeah, but that's because it's a wall. What about your floor?
My floor is unfortunately not level. It's about 2 inches higher at one side of the flat than it is at the other.
So, but are you saying that's the same for everybody else's floor as well?
No, but I'm saying that flat and level are two different concepts because you can be flat without being level.
Yeah, but you cannot be level without being flat.
I mean, you can be, though.
No. Well, okay, look, I've been through this definition of flat level a million times, but if you really look up the definition of level, you will find flat is used multiple times, like 13 times at least, in the normal dictionary definition of what level means. There is no level according to
a measurement of the difference of altitude of 2 points. Because
yeah, except in this imaginary definition that you apply to a ball. But that's imaginary. It's not provable. You can't prove it.
I mean...
we can prove a globe, but that's getting off topic.
Flat Earth Aussie Jesus,
No,
I've got a question. Do you think language is prescriptive or descriptive?
I think language is basically it's a construct to describe what we can visually see.
Yeah,
so it would be descriptive.
Yeah, so if you think that language is descriptive, why are you using semantics to try and prove that the Earth is flat?
I'm not trying to use semantics. I'm just trying to use the best ability of our English language to describe how you would describe flatness, which is level.
So trying to use level to say, saying that water is level. I'll agree that water is level, right? But that does not mean that it's flat.
Why not?
Because level is what we use to describe something that has no point higher than another, and that's perfectly capable on a globe Earth. Like water's perfectly capable to have no point higher than another on a globe Earth. That's how we get elevation profiles.
Wouldn't the edges be higher than the other side of the level?
No, because higher is defined as distance from the centre of the sphere.
No, but that's hypothetical. That's not provable.
No, it's mathematical.
That's hypothetical.
It's mathematical. You have a sphere.
I don't have a sphere. I don't have a sphere. I have level water.
No. Forget the water for a second. I'm talking about the definition of a sphere.
I have level water. Now prove to me that it conforms to a curvature and creates a curve over the surface level to the center of that sphere that you are trying to conjure.
In order to do that, I need to momentarily set that aside and discuss the...
Set aside reality.
No. Well, and discuss the concept of a sphere.
Yeah, which is setting aside the actual visible reality that we actually see. You want me to put aside all observable laws of physics so I can contemplate your hypothetical situation?
I'm wanting you to put it to one side momentarily so that we can agree on the definition of a sphere and whether the surface of a sphere is equidistant from the center of the sphere at all points.
Okay, and will it also curve left to right as well as front to back?
Yes, because that's what you have when you have a sphere in front of you.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. So we agree that the surface is equidistant at all points from the center.
Hypothetically, yes.
Right. So since one of the definitions of level involves things being being of equal height, thus equidistant from the center of a spherical object, if that is what is being considered, then you can have a level surface, whether that's water, a physical material, or whatever, on the surface of a sphere.
Hypothetically, yes. Visually, let me know when you get to that point.
Right. So now we can go back to the real world and what shape it is.
Phew.
So we have the world in the globe model as a sphere with water that is level with the surface at a given point.
And is it contained by higher edges on either side?
It doesn't need to be.
But that's how we always observe it. Do you have an observable example of how this could happen?
So you got to realize that there are slight differences in the way that macro and micro work. So, like, you can't... The way that we...
No, I just want to understand an observable explanation of how this can happen.
Right. So, if you have a large enough section of ocean, setting aside temporary differences in height from things like waves and wind blowing the surface, it has a curve. It is
where?
This front to back and left to right.
Never been seen. If you have an example of that, I'll happily entertain your...
Let me just see if I've got the picture to hand.
Left to right and front to back. This would be fun.
I'm just going to put something
While
up.
you're taking your time, I'll just take a brief break.
Yeah, I'm going to put a few things up on the screen, like left, right.
It's the Lake Pontchartrain electrical transmission pylons pictures.
Okay, let me just...
I'll drop it over in the Discord.
Okay.
I'll drop it in the general party room.
I mean, I've also got it on here as well. I'll see if the ones that you're using are any different. It's the ones that I've got.
You might have a better resolution image. I had to resort to Google.
So did I. Here we go. I've got it up.
Yeah. Either of those two at the left should do it. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your stream.
Don't worry. Like this is an after show. Like to the after show is meant to be chaotic because when you're in the actual debate, it's like, okay, we've got a set topic. When you're in the after show, you discuss all kinds of things like 1080. And in fact, 1080 is actually one of the things which I've been thinking, okay, I need to do a well put together video on this to sort of explain explain why it's the best solution in New Zealand at the moment.
Believe me, I would much rather that you were using anything else, but yeah.
Yeah.
There aren't many other options.
Yeah, like there's problems with like even with trapping. There's like people go on about the bykill of 1080, but there's still bykill with trapping. So it's not like if you use trapping, all the bykill goes away. I think that
I'm presuming that they've at least tested hormone baits, basically birth control.
Yeah.
Stuff.
One of the things that I find is a lot of people, and this is regardless of whether you're a flat earther, globe earther, but a lot of people have this idea, right, of how they wish the world to be, right? And they have this really idealist view, and it's like if everybody just did this, or if things just did this, then things would be fine. But that's not how the world works. That's why authoritarians, like nobody really likes authoritarians, but the sort of ideal of the authoritarianism is that it's sort of an answer to people being stupid,
Yeah.
I am back now, so if you want to read the answer towards...
Right, so here we have the image from Lake Pontchartrain showing pylons that are of equal height, standing from the water, and describing the curve of the surface that they are standing proud of.
Okay, so do you understand where this picture was taken from, to start with?
Yes.
Feel free to explain, because I may have a different...
Right, yeah. So what you're seeing here is a very cropped, small part of a picture that was taken from, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 miles away. And all they're really showing is the tiny little part of something that's already zoomed in on. If you took this zoom all the way back to where it was beginning, what we're seeing here would be almost microscopic. It wouldn't even be visual to the naked eye.
How does that affect the fact that there is a visible curve there?
It's not a visible curve.
I mean, it kind of is.
What you're actually saying, like, say for example, you're looking at, let's say you type the symbol 0 or the symbol 6 or 9 or whatever into your computer. What you're saying is there's no curve on that particular image. You're just seeing lots and lots and lots of very, very small images so close together to create the illusion of curvature.
I'm sorry, if you take the tie roughly halfway up the individual pylons and follow that line out, it describes a very clearly visible curve.
No. What it describes is things disappearing into the distance being so close together it creates the illusion of a curve.
So
if
why
you
then?
Right out of that, you would not see any of that great detail. This is like a very good example of modern optics, which all credit to them. Modern optics being able to show something that we would not normally see with our eye. But if you zoomed right back out to where it was, you would just see it all rising up towards the center of the field of view as normal, hitting that convergence point, and then everything being obscured into the distance and creating that illusion of curvature. And there's plenty of examples of something.
So are you saying that this image is purely an artifact of the instrument that is being used.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Right. Okay. In which case, unfortunately, there is absolutely no image I can ever show you that you will agree with, because you're just going to be able to go, oh, the camera that was used distorted the image. Doesn't matter what I present.
No, the camera's not distorting the image. The camera's still creating a true image.
Right.
But what you're seeing is just a very, very, very tiny portion of what the human eye would normally image to see that. It's zoomed in and magnified, and cropped to such a degree that what you're seeing is that everything that is rising up from your visual perspective is reaching this vanishing point and appearing to then curve down again because it's so far away.
If it's a true image, then is that curve visible in the image?
It's not curved.
What shape do you call that then?
I call that a series of things that appear to get so close together, and as they diminish into the distance and get smaller, appear to create the illusion of curvature.
Right. Why is that illusion created, in your opinion?
Because it is so far away from where the actual observer really is.
Thank you. I was about to ask if you'd got that. If we had a flat Earth, that is roughly what we would see for the lines of the various points on those pylons. They would converge at a vanishing point instead of being able to dip away over a horizon.
I would ask you if you can actually show the position of where the photographer is who actually took this image, because this image is a highly cropped, magnified part of a much larger image where the viewer is many, many miles before the very start of that image. That's not how we would ordinarily see.
So the way that it has been done is it has been done with optical zoom, I believe. And there are a few problems with optical zoom. Like, I'm pretty sure it's been taken with something like a Nikon P1000, so they have zoomed up on it. I don't think that the image goes any smaller. Maybe, I think there is a video.
No, it's obviously been cropped, It's cropped from a much bigger image and zoomed in on and cropped and zoomed in and cropped, If you could see the true image from normal human perspective, you'd be looking at from miles further behind that point. This is a seriously zoomed in image to begin with, and then cropping into the zoomed in part of it.
Okay, I've got a less zoomed in image from a slightly different position. Again, I've dropped it to the Discord.
Yeah, I can see that now, and if you could zoom right out, I don't think you can, but if you could...
It again shows a curve that becomes more obvious as it goes further out.
Okay, I don't know if I can share an image here, but I'll...
One of the issues is that it is kind of necessary to zoom up on these things, because if you don't zoom up on them... I mean, the Earth is huge, right? If you don't zoom up on them, then it becomes very difficult to see. It becomes extremely difficult to see what's like the curve of the Earth. I do think, though, that this does demonstrate, like, perspective basically states that these lines of pylons on a flat Earth should eventually converge at one point, and I've shown the direction that they should be going in, but they don't go in that direction, do they?
Let me just see whether I've got another one. No, that's useless because
Trouble is, you can see an outside picture of that lake, exactly how flat it is, and exactly how flat that all those pylons are, without this visual distortion from being down very low and zooming in onto a very tiny point of it.
I mean,
makes it appear to look.
I mean,
it's flat and level across the whole entire surface of that lake.
I mean, one of the problems that you've got though is that you would look at the image of it zoomed out, right? And you'd say, okay, that is they're obviously it's obviously level. But what you're ignoring is the part that when you zoom in, they start curving. Like, of course they're going to look...
They're not curving. That's the whole point.
Like, then why is these lines that I've drawn... why do they diverge from these lines that I've...
Because your lines are not taking into account distance, diminution, and how the spaces in between each and every one of those things is also getting smaller.
Okay.
And the fact that you're viewing it from a certain angle, you could take it from a different angle and you would not see that, but you're taking it from this particular angle and thinking that tiny little bit represents curvature.
Do you see how the middle line drawn on that is at the center of the image that's being used? It's roughly representing the eye level.
It's roughly, but it's not following it at all, because you can see about halfway through the image, all of a sudden, halfway through those pylons are below it.
That's because that's where we start to see the curve going away from us.
I knew you were going to say that.
No.
I knew it. And I thank you for saying that, because you do not understand distance diminution and how sizes and spaces both shrink in the distance.
If it's just diminution, wouldn't they shrink evenly about the center point?
Well, they do until about the center point.
They actually start moving away from the center point the closer they get to the center point.
At about the center, in the middle of that image, that's where you see, the diminution effect is happening much faster than a straight line can observe.
Right.
You
Do you notice?
Perspective is not a straight line.
Perspective's not a straight line. Did you just say that?
Yeah. It's a shrinking line. It's a shrinking line.
I'm done. If lines of perspective aren't straight, then there's no argument that can be made here, because it's utterly contrary to everything that is accepted about how perspective works.
Yeah, but all of those lines are equally as thick all the way to the convergence point. But those lines should also be equally getting thinner and thinner and thinner.
Those lines are just representing the lines of sight. And
but they're very, very, very crude. They're nowhere near accurate.
I mean, hold up. I'm just going to bring up something back in Firefox, right? There's this thing here. Do you have any idea what this is? When it comes up. Has it come up yet?
What's the point?
So this
see.
So this is for this is basically like an academy that will tell you how to draw things, and it basically uses perspective. Like, no matter who you talk to in any professional thing, they will tell you that perspective always relies on straight lines.
Okay, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so this here basically shows you the straight lines that are used for perspective in this particular thing. So, of course, this if you have any curved lines, well, then you're not using perspective. You're using you've obviously got something else going on. Like if something
like
is
the archway there near your mouse. Yeah.
What?
Like the archway near your mouse that you just had.
Wait,
it's curved. Obviously, we can see it's curved.
Are the lines on it curved though? Where do you see any? Where do you see any curved red lines? Like none of these red lines are curved.
No, not the red lines. I'm just talking about the archway. Obviously, it's curved. I'm agreeing with you.
Oh yeah, like the archway.
Just above your mouse there. Yeah.
Like the archway is curved, but it's like natural things. But the lines of perspective are all straight.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're not going. Like all lines of perspective are always straight. So when it comes to this, right? When you're drawing lines of perspective will always be straight, and the lines of perspective will appear to converge at one point. And when you draw lines of perspective out from these pylons, yes, they all converge at one single point. Why do the pylons not continue to converge at a center point, which you'd expect if the Earth was flat?
Oh man! Like if you go back to your last picture, for example, obviously they weren't making it the same perspective point because you aren't right in the middle of the line of view.
But they...
No. Actually, if you go back to the previous image, there are groups of lines that meet at a given point.
Yeah, like right down here. Like if you draw out parallel lines of perspective for long enough, they will converge on a singular point.
Yeah, and that's all to do with the point of view of the viewer. If that viewer changed his perspective and went, say, 50 feet to the left and 100 feet upwards, they might all converge into a middle point. They're all perspective points.
Yeah, but it doesn't stop the fact that lines of perspective will always converge on a point. Like the point may change, like parallel lines of perspective will always converge on a single point.
They will eventually, if you are high enough up to see where that perspective point comes to.
Well, as if the perspective point is on the image, but even even here, you could probably actually draw out some of these lines of perspective a bit more, and they would still converge.
Well, what
on
about
a single
those lines
point.
to the left, though? Look at those lines to the left of the building. They're pointing upwards. You didn't keep continuing them to keep going to a protective point.
Well, you could
just decided on an arbitrary point where you wanted to make the lines meet.
Well, no, they would still.
Each and every one of those perspective lines would go to a different point.
They'd still converge on a single point. Like here's the thing. Like if you've got any more than two lines, they two lines will. You can say two lines will converge on a single point, and if you have a third parallel line, that parallel line will also converge on the same point as those last two parallel lines. And this goes for any of these parallel lines here. Like if you were to continue them out beyond the image, they would eventually reach.
That's rubbish.
What?
Look at those two on your top left. They're going upwards away from each other. They're just going to keep on going out into infinity, getting further and further away.
They're getting closer to each other.
Left, going horizontally.
Like these two here.
Horizontally.
Like
to your left.
Right.
Top left, horizontally, not vertically. Horizontally.
Oh, horizontally.
So if you come down to the capstone of the arch, you've got the two sets of red lines at the top left. You trace them to the left because
they're
that's
vertical. I want to look at the horizontal ones. Those two are going to go higher and higher and further away from each other, aren't they?
No,
from that point.
because you trace away from the centre of view. So the vanishing point, the point where the perspective lines meet, is off the left side of the image.
Yeah, but I'm taking them to the right.
You don't do that.
Why not?
Because it's...
That's the way they're drawn. They're drawn towards the right. Why can't you keep following them?
Because perspective goes away from the centre of view.
No, it goes towards the centre of view. Always towards the centre of view.
Not necessarily. Like, have you heard of 2-point perspective?
All I can say is I can see two lines coming from the left side of the screen, going towards the upper side and getting further and further away from each other. Now, you explain that to me, or explain why you don't understand how convergence works.
Have you heard of 2-point perspective?
Okay. No. That was actually a very important word there. Convergence. The lines converge to the left. They diverge to the right.
Yeah. But when they hit the centre point, obviously they reach the middle of the building and then they start converging back downwards, as you would expect. And always converges towards the centre of the image. It does never, ever keep on converging upwards and away, because if that building was on the other side of the middle of the screen, those convergence lines would be going the opposite direction, as we can see.
Can you just Google 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective?
Yeah, I've already got a. I'm just getting a.
And nominally 3-point perspective, but that's confusing. And I can never draw that right.
God damn it, Pinterest.
We're already looking at a 3D image with 3 points of perspective. I'm not interested in getting bogged down in semantics.
Okay.
Don't ask me about.
So I'm going to bring up this 2-point perspective image right here. This is coming up here, and I'll search for 1-point perspective. These are drawings, by the way. Image. All right. Just to give you an idea of what each is.
For this, I prefer the phrase diagram.
Oh, diagram. Okay. So
that 2-point perspective image there, if you follow the lines on the left-hand side of the picture going right, you see that they diverge in exactly the same way as on the photograph that we were looking at. But the perspective point is to the left of the image.
Yeah, I'm just trying. I'll just go back to it.
On 1-point perspective, you have a single point, which is usually, but not always, in the middle of the image. You can have 1-point perspective drawn with it being completely off to the side of your image, although that looks weird and skewed.
Now, 1-point perspective is how it always is, but when you're looking at divergent angles, which are obviously 90 degrees away from each other, diverging away from it, it's not going to show you the same thing you'd expect to see in your 1-point perspective. But that's only because you're looking at streets, which are man-made artificial constructs. You're not looking at actual reality. You're just looking at a man-made configuration of a 90-degree angle. And, yeah, okay.
So, like...
It's got nothing to do with reality.
So, like, you won't necessarily always be facing down a street where everything is going away from you in a single direction. Like, things can be going away from you in different directions, and that's when people use things like 2-point perspective, because 2-point perspective accounts that there's two different directions that things are heading away from you and that are getting smaller in, and that's what's going on here, like in 2-point perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that if you're able to rise up above it and look down upon it, everything would still be going towards a single point. It's just that it looks that way because you've got artificially drawn linear lines, which are...
Well, that's what's going on in... That's what's going on when things are going to the left here. Like, it's the perspective is pointing because we're not facing this like head on. Things are diverging off to the side because that's where the lines of, or they're converging off to the side because that's where the center point is.
Yeah, you've got your 90-degree places at various different angles from your point of view.
Yeah.
There are multiple of them.
Do you have anything to add to that, Dread?
No, because I can't get this damn search to work.
Oh, okay. So,
Sorry, there's an image I had, but I can't find it.
so bringing it back to here, like all lines of perspective will eventually meet at some point. And granted that these are, if these are all parallel lines, like if these pylons are all parallel and the Earth is flat, then they should all converge at this point here, highlighted by all these lines. It's not a coincidence that these lines all converge at a single point.
So go back to the other one again.
Let me go back to the other one. Yeah.
Hasn't gone back.
It takes a few.
It jumped around really quickly before. But anyway, once you were... No, the one of that city view before your buildings. Yeah, that one. So see how there's multiple different convergence points of 90-degree angle. That's all it is. It's 90-degree angle convergence point.
Yes, but
whereas when you're showing that one of the one pylons, you're showing one 90-degree convergence point without seeing multiple.
But that's
where every single one of those lines of those buildings that's a flat and level will create a line that you can draw different convergence points towards. It's
well,
it doesn't mean that you're
it's all
in the middle of it, looking at it.
It's all parallel. It's when convergence points only really matters when we're talking about parallel. Like if something is parallel, then it will. Then we can say that it would converge. When it comes to
good. Okay, can you stop for 1 second then? So you're looking here at multiple parallel lines converging at multiple different convergence points. Each and every one of them are making a completely different convergence point, like that one, the big tower on your right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've gone back to it.
Yeah. But
it was making a massive convergence points towards the left. You've got all these other ones convert. Yeah, okay. So on your right there, you got the big tower.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Straight line going up, and see where it's got the parallel line just at the roof point. Where the flat roof is, not the triangular one. And it's sending a line way off to your left, and its convergence point is way off to your left, outside of the screen of view.
Well,
there's very few convergence lines here that meet at the same point because you're looking at multiple different parallel and perpendicular lines.
The thing is, you take individual sets of parallel lines. So the column at the right-hand side, the verticals from the archway, in theory, and assuming that nothing's leaning because of time and age and stuff, those lines would all meet at a point way up above the picture. But we then take a set of parallel lines that are lying in a different axis.
Hang on a sec. Can I interrupt you for 1 moment?
Yeah.
If this is a globe, should each and every one of those perpendicular lines be pointing away from each other, not towards the convergence
at the scales we have here, the difference will not be visible because we're looking at a difference of a few tens of meters.
Okay, but they're clearly visibly pointing towards the centre. Clearly visible, pointing towards the centre.
Which is a trick.
On a globe, they should be at least pointing slightly outwards away from each other.
Which is either a trick of perspective lines, or due to age and shifting in the ground, which I cannot tell because I don't know the site properly.
Yeah. In other words, this is another excellent the flat Earth proof or I hate to say it, convergence Earth-proof.
I mean,
but
Oh,
concave
no.
Earth-proof.
We would not expect. We would not
It's the
expect to see.
exact opposite of the globe.
We would not expect to see a visible splaying out on this particular diagram.
So why are we seeing visible splaying in?
I would need to know more about the camera that has taken the image to be able to say for certain, but it may be that it's a restricted field of view. It may be that it's an illusion due to the fact that the center of the field of view when the camera was taken is below the archway.
Rightio. It's obviously bong o'clock for
No,
me,
and thus in the
you've got
same
no
way.
answer.
No, and thus in the same way that the lines appear to go off to appear to converge when you go off to the left of the image, because that is away from the center of the image.
one thing that I would
Uh-huh.
one thing that I'd like to point out is that the point remains that when you've got parallel lines, they all meet up on a single point, right? Like, when it comes to these, we can draw multiple parallel lines out. They all meet at a singular point. So these pylons should all converge towards this point, not start curving down. So I still want to know why they're curving down.
Okay, well, if you can see how you've got like 0 dislikes at this time, because I've yet to click on it.
We need to get 20 dislikes.
Yeah, but anyway, you can see how there's a 0 there. If you zoomed in on that 0, you would probably see that eventually you're going to come to a series of flat and level pixelated lines. It's just giving you the illusion of 0 at this time.
The illusion of 0. What do you mean?
Or the illusion of curve.
Oh, you're talking about the dislikes. I'm not actually on the view page. I'm on the stream page. So
Whatever it is, whatever
likes.
you're seeing on a computer screen, when you see the illusion of curve, whether it be the 0 or whatever, it's just an illusion, because the amounts are too small for your eye to get a resolution of it.
I mean,
And so it just
that's
appears
not.
as a curve. You've got too many straight lines, say, close together, it gives you the illusion of curve, and so you just believe it's a curve. And that's what you're seeing here on this highly, highly zoomed in image. You think it looks like a curve.
That's not an argument, though. Like, that's just saying that, okay, this is an illusion because it's on a computer. That doesn't work. We could say that just about anything is an illusion, and it wouldn't work as an argument.
Yeah, but I've already explained this before. Like, if you zoomed right back out to where the actual photographer of this image was, because you have you got a source for this photographer?
Soundly.
Do you know where he's standing and what he's looking at? Okay, so where is he and what's his position? What does a normal resolution image of what he's looking at appear like?
Like this would be zoomed out and like a lot, and
It's highly, highly zoomed in, and it's cropped and edited to make it look as though the very final little part of the very last of his image looks as though it's curvature.
Let me see if I
I
can.
know this. I've been through this 1,000 times before, playing ads.
Like, because
no offense, but
whether you're zoomed in or out doesn't make a difference, though.
yeah, it does. Because once you reach that point where the horizon actually is, see how there's that blending point where you can't really tell the difference between what's up and what's below?
Yeah.
Because of the optics, that such good modern optics are so clever at doing this. What you're failing to realise is that not only are you experiencing distance diminution of the objects that you're viewing, but you're also experiencing distance diminution of the spaces in between and it creates the illusion of curvature.
Right.
But that horizon is still flat and level.
If it is simply diminution, why do the bottom parts of the pylons there, the concrete pillars that are sticking up, not follow the black line at the top of them? Why do they start to drop off?
Because once they reach that horizon point, do you see that blue line that goes across left to right? That's the horizon.
Sure.
That's the point where they start changing.
And a good thumb's width before that, at least on my screen, you've got that the tops of the pillars start to move away from that line. If it was simply diminution, why do those pillars basically, why do we see them appear to be pretty much similar in height, and then suddenly drop down to a point?
I don't see them suddenly dropping at all. I see them gradually dropping down.
No, sorry.
That's the point where, from the viewer's point of view, and from his actual height, which is hidden from this image because this is a false image, even though it's a true image, it's a false image in the fact that they've just taken a tiny section of this image, which is they had a view zoomed all the way back out again and showed the true image. You would still see the exact same effect. Those things that you are seeing that appear to be above that pylon, where you see the bottom black arrow going up, start counting the towers. You start counting the towers, and you'll see that when they start going down, is a multiple amount. But you can't count them because it's too small.
Right, I may have not been clear when I said that the concrete pillars suddenly shrink down to a point. What I was referring to is the apparent change in height of the pillars, where they're very similar in height, and then it very suddenly appears to go from them being roughly the same height to it pinching off to a point.
Yep. It's exactly the same thing. It's the exactly same normal aspect of distance diminution. Do you know what distance diminution means? That when something gets further away from you, it shrinks?
Yes.
Angular
sizes.
Yeah.
Angular
and the fact
sizes.
is, you look at the bottom of those pylons, right? Are you looking at the bottom of those pylons, and you make a mark where it reaches the horizon, and draw it straight up, and you start actually counting those numbers of whatever you call them, steel towers above, and I'll bet you will find there's about hundreds more than what there is on the bottom. Hundreds.
Sorry, there's hundreds more of what than at the bottom? Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said.
The top part of those towers that are disappearing and creating that illusion of curvature.
Yep, which is what you'd expect to see if the bottom part has disappeared over a horizon.
Yeah,
You
well,
can still see the top part.
I'm telling you that point where it reaches the blue line of the horizon, which is well before that black line, well before, that black line is very, very thick. You bring that back to where the blue line actually first meets it, draw a line straight upwards, and you start counting the tops of those towers, and I'll bet you've probably got, I wouldn't say thousands, but you've got hundreds more beyond that point that appear to be at the same place because you're looking at a 2D image.
Right, but that is not inconsistent with what you would expect to see on a curved surface where the bottom half of the pillar has disappeared beyond the curve and you can still see the top half.
Where the blue line of the horizon meets those pillars, the pillars are still rising upwards.
Yes, as you would expect if they've gone just over the curve.
No. They're nowhere near the curve. They're nowhere near the curve. What are you talking about? Are you blind? Are you looking at the same image that I'm looking at?
I was about to ask you the same thing. Because those pillars...
Where's the blue line of the horizon? Look at it to the right of those pillars. Draw a line.
I mean...
I can't exactly do that on the stream.
Just do it with your eyes, it's okay, you know.
Right, so at the point the concrete pillars disappear, you'll notice that we still have the metal portion of the pylons is visible beyond that point.
I still see concrete pillars way beyond there. Way beyond.
No, so if you can drop a vertical at the end of that white point that's the concrete pillars.
Uh-huh. That's like thousands of pylons away.
You'll see that we can still see the top part of the metal pylons beyond that point. Yes?
Uh-huh.
Right. That's not inconsistent with the base of those pillars disappearing over a curve and still being able to see the top part of the metal pylons.
I'm sorry, it is.
How?
Because
do
you
these
can
things
still see it.
No. Do these things magically disappear when the base drops just below the horizon or something?
No, they don't.
Right, so we would expect to be able to see the top parts, even if the base has dropped beneath this curve, on a curved model.
Okay, so how high are these pylons in your opinion?
Sorry, how?
How high would each of these pylons be in your?
I don't have sufficient information to gain that from the photo.
Can you just say look at the first closest one to you and see, oh, well, that base is, well, X amount, tower is X amount tall. We could probably work out how tall one of those pylons is with a quick Google search.
I've got no point of reference to compare their height to, so I cannot obtain a height.
So you can't do a quick Google search, but draw a line across it.
I'll have a look. Pond.
I don't think it's tidal. You know, it is a freshwater lake. So.
I'm just going to say that
I just don't think. No, it's. I can't get the height of the pylons quickly. It's not showing up on a quick search.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately.
But by your estimation, how high would you say those towers would be?
I
like
cannot make an
estimation. I
cannot make an estimation. I have nothing in that picture that I can compare them against, unfortunately.
Right,
So
yeah.
I cannot make an honest estimation of their height.
But you can still make an honest estimation of how much cabbage you should be seeing. That's okay. Good.
I can make an estimate of the visual, but I cannot make an estimate of a numerical value.
Right, yeah.
It would be dishonest of me to say, oh, that tower's tall, the horizon's this far away, because I've got nothing to measure against.
Oh, fucking hell. Alright, I'll do it.
But yeah, like I don't see how this isn't evidence of a globe, you know?
That's how it is.
Because it's literally things curving over a horizon. You've literally got things disappearing bottom up over the horizon, getting lower as they go over the horizon. This is what you'd expect to see on a globe. You wouldn't expect to see things curving downwards on a flat Earth. I've got this Blender image here, and at no point do these start curving downwards. There's a single line of sight towards a convergence point, and eventually all these parallel lines would converge in the center of the image, because there's a flat surface. There's a flat surface here. However, when we look at things that are far away using a camera in the real world, we find that things start curving downwards, and there's nothing about perspective says that it should curve downwards. Like I said, there's a formula for perspective that we can use and this formula is consistent as long. Yeah, this formula is consistent through a lot of just trying to look for the words. Like, we can go ahead and, like, I could take an image with my phone or something, and granted that I know what lens my phone is using and all that kind of stuff, I could say, okay, this thing should take up this amount of the image.
Okay. Let me just copy this. Look back on the scroll on your channel, Planarwalk, where we were discussing this actually with somebody else, and somebody produced a CGI image of what we would expect to see on a flat plane in an equivalent situation.
Okay.
Now, yes, it's a CGI diagram, but it's a description of what we would expect to see given a flat Earth.
Yeah, well, I couldn't find anything in Google. It just,
This is what we'd expect to see if the Earth was flat. I've got it up on stream now.
But how do you know that that's what you'd expect to see if the Earth was flat? That's my thing.
Because we know
You
how
actually
perspective works.
understand how convergence works. But what about convergence?
Like, perspective and convergence.
It's got convergence in there. It's got the towers overlapping visually as they get further away.
But that's assuming that your eyesight is right in the middle of the point of view.
The person who made the image matched it up as best they could to what we had from the photo that was being used in the discussion at the time. The line.
See any curvature.
That's because this is an image on what we would expect to see on a flat plane. The vanishing point would be on the horizon at eye level, and anything above that line would slope down to meet it at the horizon. Anything below it would slope up to meet it at the horizon.
Can I see any distance diminution in that tower right at the very end?
The one at the end there is I actually don't know what that tower's doing, but I think it's a comparison of the model to the one that we're using at the side.
And can you tell me, just before you go any further, why it appears to ramp towards the centre point in the first place?
Because that's how perspective works on a flat setup. You have a vanishing
globe
point.
Perspective.
No.
You guys always want to bring in perspective when it suits your purposes, but you can never explain why it always ramps upwards in the first place. Where immediately, from your point of view?
Perspective is straight lines. Why would it?
Yeah, of course.
Why would
because
it ramp downwards immediately?
Well, it would if it was a globe. That's all.
Why?
Because globes are spherical in order. Globes do not automatically ramp up going downwards. That's all I'm saying.
You do realise that it's going upwards because of perspective, right?
Yeah, of course, I do understand perspective. That's what we flat earthers talk about all the time. I just want to understand why that would work on a globe, where from a globe perspective, it should ramp downwards straight away.
No, because it's like
Why?
the reason why is because it's going up due to perspective, and it starts curving down. The reason why it's curving downwards is due to the curvature of the Earth.
But a curvature would exist immediately from your feet.
Yes, but it is so tiny at short distances that you won't see it, because remember that
it is 8 inches.
Object is tens of thousands of kilometres across. Also, 8 inches per mile squared doesn't work. That's an estimate. It describes a parabola and not a sphere.
I've just got a question, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus. You do realise what like exponential things are, right? As you get further away, the amount of curve becomes exponentially greater. So
it should be. Yeah.
So
it should keep ramping upwards.
So when it comes to the curve of the Earth here, right? There's so when it comes to the curve,
it's ramped upwards until an arbitrary point, and then all of a sudden, no,
it's not. It's not an arbitrary point. You can see.
Why is it going upwards away from the viewer?
Because of perspective.
Perspective.
Like perspective is what's making it go upwards, and then the curvature.
It's called perspective, but you will claim it when it suits your purposes.
Because we know how perspective works. Because the reason why
we know how perspective works, and we're sick and tired of being called perspective.
Like we know how perspective works. Like when it comes to this going up, it's going up because of it appears to be going up because of perspective. The reason why it's going down is because the amount of curvature is greater than what perspective would causes it to converge.
Give me a realistic reason why it should appear to go upwards before going down on a sphere. Just give me a rational explanation for that.
Because initially, the surface of a sphere...
Viewer height.
Yeah. There you go.
It should be dropping away from you immediately. You're on top of the sphere at any given...
But the drop is insignificant right in front of you.
So it arbitrarily rises up to a certain distance.
No, it doesn't rise up at all.
Yes, it does. You can see it in the picture. It's going up to the middle of the picture.
Can you flip back to the flat Earth version of this diagram?
Yep.
No, me?
No, sorry, the flat Earth... Oh, there we go. So you'll notice that with the flat Earth one, we also have it appearing to ramp up at all points that are below eye level.
I don't know if he's still here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some problems.
Oh, okay.
The stream's jammed for me.
Oh, the stream's jammed.
Yeah. I think it's at my end.
Might be my...
Yeah, it's still the same for me. So, what do you call it?
Okay. But initially...
I think it might be my bitrate going down or something.
It's back enough for this. Initially, because the curve is very, very slight right in front of you, your initial point of view is indistinguishable from a flat surface until you get a distance away where the curve drops off enough that it no longer appears to be basically tangent to the curve.
Do you know what I call that? I call that very convenient. because it matches the flat Earth proof exactly how it should be.
No.
As we do see. But it's very convenient because you can just take our reality and match it to your illusion.
Take a circle.
Okay.
Right. When you draw a line tangent to the surface of that circle, the initial point on the circle where
will immediately drop off.
appears.
Will immediately drop off.
No, appears. Can I finish?
No, it will immediately drop off.
I can barely hear what you're saying, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus.
It mathematically appears to be a flat surface at that point of contact. The bigger the circle that you're drawing is, the longer it's approximately tangent to the surface.
Yes, but at no point will it ever appear to rise up to your line of sight. It will be immediately dropping off.
However, the camera is not on the surface. The camera is
it's on a level.
The camera is a distance above the surface. So you have that situation where the ground beneath your feet, even on a flat surface, would appear to slope up to meet your visual horizon.
No. The camera's on the level, and the horizon would immediately drop off. And
when you stand on a flat road, does the ground beneath your feet appear to come up to meet your horizon?
Of course it does, because that's how it works on convergence on a flat Earth.
Right. So why?
Thank you. Yes.
No. So why would apparent perspective not do the same when you're stood on a curved surface?
Because it's not a curved surface; it's flat.
Did you miss the conditional there? If you're on a curved surface.
If you're on a curved surface, it would conform to the curvature, which applies to the mathematical formula of 8 inches at 1 mile, squared by distance.
That formula is incorrect and describes a parabola, not a circular section.
Prove it.
Sure. You got any graphing software available?
What?
It's been proven, mate. We know the curvature formula. Okay, fair enough. By the time you get to 90 degrees around the curve, it might continue to keep going in a parabola, but that's irrelevant. We just want to see it in reality, and it just conforms to the spherical distance of a ball of 4,000 miles.
How is the fact that it's a parabola irrelevant to me saying that doesn't describe the surface of a sphere?
Because the parabola only starts existing once you reach beyond the equator. By which stage it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
No. A parabola is a different shape to the quadrant of a circle that you would be describing in that time. It becomes...
Okay, then give me a better formula and I can wait. Show me how it isn't 8 inches per squared, 8 inches squared per mile. For all intents and purposes until we reach about 4,000 miles distance. No, you got to have it off the top of your head. You claim that. Either you have it or you don't. You know, we know what it is. I'm sick and tired of you people saying, oh, yeah, blah, blah, that doesn't apply. You should know it off the top of your head if it doesn't apply. It applies. It is 7.98 inches per mile squared, no matter how far you go until you reach at least 4,000 miles away, in which case nobody's going to go 4,000 miles.
That is an incorrect formula that is used for estimating up to a couple of 100 miles distance.
What are you quoting here? What are you quoting? Can I see the link on what you're quoting?
I'm not quoting anything.
So you're speaking
It is-
bullshit, as usual, like all you guys do. You've got nothing. You know the Earth is flat, and you're just wasting my time.
No. I'm just trying to find something that quotes it specifically.
What the fuck? Either you know it or you don't know it. If you don't know it, why are you looking for somebody else who thinks they know it?
Because I want to give you an accurate set of numbers.
Okay, and you can tell me which person is giving it to me, because you obviously aren't capable of doing it. Searching. Yeah.
That one's not got it.
Of course not. Because you can't find shit, mate.
Okay, so
I posted it in voice chat.
oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my searches tonight. I keep getting things that aren't directly relevant to what we're looking at.
Fair enough. I'm looking for something that would allow me to.
It's in the voice text. Yeah, Terry's posted it in the voice text.
Okay.
I'm hoping. Yes, that is the same one that I found actually. Eventually, it's just it was a bit more math heavy than I thought.
Alright, I've got it now. I've got it up on stream.
I see nothing.
Might take a while because there was a bit of a delay earlier. I mean, it's up on my end when I clicked live. So,
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting
yeah.
there.
If you reload, it should be up.
15 to 20 seconds to get.
Well, if you reload, it should be up there by now. Or I could just. How about I do this? This should.
Oh god, this is a waste of my time.
I mean, I've
I
got
think, yeah, Planarwalk. It's been fun, mate.
Yeah.
I've got other things to do than sit around here and wait for.
I mean, it's probably because the stream is behind on your end. I just went live in Discord so that you could see it, though. So you should be able to see it.
If I'd been expecting to have the discussion about this, I'd have had it prepared beforehand. I wasn't expecting to have the discussion.
So you guys can see it in Discord, right? Wait.
I can see it on the main. I can see it on the mainstream, and I can see it in the Discord as well now.
Yeah, and Discord is doesn't have any delay. So, does anyone have anything to say about this, or?
How do you see it in Discord?
You just so there should be a thing where it goes where it has me being live, and you can join the stream in Discord.
Just be aware that it will double your sound because you'll get the YouTube feed as well as the Discord feed. Because it's helpful like that.
Well,
I click on stream, it's not working.
no, you click on the. There should be a way to access it in Discord. You should maybe go over my username or something. I'm not sure exactly how it. I'm not 100% sure how it works because usually I'm streaming this stuff.
if you double click his name in Discord on the stream section, it should open it up.
All I get is like server boost, Right, people, notification settings, private settings, hide your channels, leave. So.
No, not right click. Just hover your mouse over his name and it should come.
Yeah, hover does nothing.
Well, I guess it's going to be hard to get Flat Earth Aussie Jesus to see the stuff.
I can go back to the YouTube side of it.
Yeah, this is just faster. Like anything I do right now on my end, you would be able to see using this, rather than YouTube, which takes a few seconds to see it.
Yeah, I fucking Discord doesn't like me. Pardon my English.
Does anyone have, like, Dread, do you have anything to say about what I've got on screen?
No. That's basically the explanation of why the formula of 8 inches per mile squared doesn't match up. It's basically the difference between the parabola and a circular section if you overlay the two. The difference is very small to start with, but it rapidly, as you can see on that curve, gets further and further and further away from the true value.
Yeah. This is something that most people know these days, and that's why even flat earthers have been going, your curve calculator says this, rather than using the 8 inches per mile squared.
You know, it's a beautiful estimate for a few hundred miles, but beyond that, it starts to fall apart, and it falls apart a lot well before you reach the nominal radius of the Earth.
Yeah.
So you do understand, of course, normal spherical trigonometry, of course.
Yes.
Oh.
And so, like a sphere, say it's 25,000 miles circumference, must exhibit that 8 inches per mile squared that we talked about.
No, it doesn't, because that describes a parabolic curve, not a circular curve.
Right, yeah. So can you explain to me then the formula for a 25,000 mile circumference ball? What formula would we use to describe that circular distance?
It's not my specific field, but
I know, but surely you know that if it's a 25,000 mile circumference ball, it wouldn't be that hard to work out the formula for what the curvature should be.
I mean, someone actually put in chat that the formula is the square root of r plus h, and I'm assuming that r means the radius of Earth plus the viewer height.
Yeah, but isn't r an assumption? I just want to know, how did you work out r? Did you dig down and find it?
Okay,
there's
R
heaps
can
of
be calculated in many, many ways, but this is the formula to work out the curve given that radius.
Yeah.
Which you've asked us to, if we're working...
Given the radius. Who gave it to you?
No. You asked us for what the formula would be.
Yeah. But I'm also asking who gave you that radius.
Right. That's a separate question.
No, it's not. It's part of it. It's part of the same.
No. You asked.
Where did this radius come from?
Right. You asked for the formula for a ball of a given radius. This is how you would work that out.
Okay. Fine. Go ahead.
Obtaining the radius can be done in several different ways. The classic one of which is the Eratosthenes experiment. There's also the method used by Al-Biruni, which basically involved finding the height of a mountain by basically surveying the angles to the top of it from nearby ground. And
So
then
neither of these are you actually using R.
And that then allows you to calculate R by means of some further trigonometry. And
Right.
with plugging those values.
Let's see this further trigonometry then.
Right. Alderini's method.
Assuming the sun must obviously be a certain height in the first place.
For the Eratosthenes experiment,
Did everyone? Anyone there? Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Did Dredd cut out? I think he did.
Yeah, I think I might have blown his brain because nobody can work out what R is.
I mean,
Anybody would like to tell me what R is?
I mean, we've worked out. Like, I've seen people work it out. Like, there's recently there's been people that have gone ahead and used the angles that we get from angles of the sun to work out how big the Earth is, and they get the same result every time.
Oh yeah, which people did this?
Slice Barcane, I'm pretty sure, did this.
You're pretty sure?
Yeah, like this is going off memory. I can search it up if you want.
Yeah.
Sneeze, Sly Barcane.
Because I have exposed that fraud multiple times.
Okay. So yeah, he has.
And if in fact you work that out as where the sun was locally above us, it would give the exact expectations you'd want to, or results you'd expect to see above a flat planet Earth.
He actually didn't because.
Yeah, I did. I actually watched how he did it and analysed exactly how he did it and watched how they introduced this artificial curve to fit the results that they'd got and realised that actually perfectly matches without adding the curve. It was on a flat planar Earth.
Let's see where the data is. So yeah, he if we go to back a bit, yeah, you've got the equator and the distance. So they're putting the sun there. I'm just trying to work out what exactly is happening. So they're saying where Daniel is, where Eddie is. Alright.
Sorry about that. My router crashed.
Ah, okay. That's why you cut out there. I was wondering.
Yeah, no, it just suddenly completely lost signal.
Yeah, I'm showing how.
Probably got coronavirus or something.
Nah, I knocked a cable.
Okay, I think this is the point where they go ahead and show us. Okay, so this is the.
But you do realise you can back engineer any evidence you get to fit the expectations you want to see. Doesn't matter how you do it.
I mean, what they're doing here is they're finding that.
It's all happening at different times of the day.
I mean, this is the exact same time.
On a flat Earth as well.
This is all happening.
Right, you'll see that it doesn't work on a flat Earth when we zoom back
It
out.
does work on a flat Earth. It works exactly on a flat Earth. If that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for globe Earth proof, you'll find that as well.
This is showing. This is literally showing, like what angles they measured, and if it's on a flat Earth, then it's basically saying this is how it would look if the Earth were flat, and it's going to show you in a little bit, and it's showing you that they don't line up on a flat Earth.
Okay, but my question is to you, Planer, how did they measure time?
What? I mean,
How were they measuring time?
They were all taken at local solar noon.
There you go. There you go.
I mean, you do know what local solar noon is, right?
Yep. Local to the actual position at the time it was taken. So when you put all that data together and put it into the globe Earth models, of course it's going to make it look like they was different. Separate.
I mean, if
as the sun came across a certain spot on the planet Earth, yeah, that's exactly what you'd expect to see.
I mean, it's showing you exactly what you'd expect to see if the Earth was a globe. Like, as they get closer to the equator, the angle that the angle of the sun is getting much higher than what you'd expect to see on a flat Earth.
Maybe because you're viewing it from a distant position. If you viewed it from the same position, the angle would be actually lower.
So if it was...
So here we have here we have the yellow lines, right? And they show you what the angles that they got were. Realize that, right?
You know, if you try to actually fit that to the planar Earth model, if you're actually attempting to do it that way, you would have far better results and improve it.
I mean, that's what they're trying to do.
What is the mistake that's been made here?
The mistake is you're trying to apply this to a globular model.
They're trying to play...
At this point, video, he is not trying to apply it to a globe model. He is plotting them on a flat planar surface.
From where? Different positions or the same position?
From different positions, because you need different positions in order to try to place where the sun is. Because if you took all the measurements at the same point, of course you're going to get the same number. But that's going to put the sun on the same line. It just tells you it's on that line. It doesn't give you the point that the sun is at. If you just take measurements from a single point.
Yeah. And did you see the debate that Planarwalk and I had earlier today?
No, unfortunately, I was watching a different video.
Okay, well, in my opening statement, I sort of made my, the thing that I really need to discuss. And I haven't really done it yet in a full-on video presentation, but I at least made an introduction to it. And what you're missing is the fact that where we visually see the sun is not the same place anybody else ever visually sees the sun. So until you understand that concept, everything else you say can just be dismissed. Nonsense.
So
Can I ask
how
you a-
far away... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus, can I ask you a question? Why is it that it's very convenient for us globe earthers that whenever we take observations like this, it always matches exactly what you'd expect to see on a globe model? Yet whenever we take these observations and try and put it onto any kind of flat Earth model, it always fails. Like, why is that?
Because you haven't taken into account the very laws, basically, for want of a better word, perspective, and the visual aspects of light and how it works.
So how much should an observation that I make from 53 degrees north vary? if I'm going to take this into account to properly map things onto a flat Earth?
I really couldn't tell you, but all I can say is if you're standing on a shoreline of a beach, watching a sunset, and you've got somebody 100 metres away from you, and they are seeing the same sunlight coming towards you, or
I'm going to have to apply the same standard you tried to apply to me earlier. You're making a claim. Why don't you have the exact numbers?
As I'm trying to explain to you, if you'll give me the moment to just explain it really simply. You're standing on a shoreline, you're watching the sunset, and you can see the sunlight coming to your feet, and you see a person 100 feet away, and they see the sunlight coming to their feet. You are looking at two completely different suns, even though they're exactly the same sun. So if you apply that then to a massive planar Earth point of view, where everybody is thousands of miles away from each other, you're never going to be seeing the sun in the same place at the same time, even though you're getting the same effect.
So how much should it vary?
Massively. Massively
is not a value.
1 degree, 2 degree, 20 degrees.
It depends where you are.
Yeah, so if I'm at 53 degrees north and the other person taking a measurement is at 40 degrees north, how much should the difference be?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot's useless for compensating for an error in the measurement.
Absolutely, because I don't know. I haven't sat down and done all these measurements. All I can tell you is it's going to be quite a lot, because you're looking through a completely different part of the atmosphere at the sun, where your apparition of the sun is going to appear, as to where the person elsewhere looking through the apparition or through the atmosphere is going to see the same apparition.
But you were earlier expecting me to have the exact number for the formula to give you on the spot. I'm now trying to apply the same concept to you and go, why can't you give me even an approximate estimate?
I beg your pardon, on the spot of what? What was I asking?
When I was trying to find the formula to describe the curve of the Earth as it goes away from you, you were demanding that I had it on the spot. I should know it. I'm the one making a statement. I should know it instantly off the top of my head.
Well, because R is a given. The radius of your Earth that you believe in is a given. Whereas, as opposed to the actual height of the atmosphere and where the apparition of the sun exists, it's not a given.
No. You were asking, what is the formula for a sphere of this radius?
Yeah. That's right. So, the radius you believe in. I don't believe in that radius. I believe it's flat.
Right. But you were still expecting me to have that available on the spot instantly.
Well, not necessarily. I would have given you a chance to research it if you wanted. But you should know off the top of your head, more or less.
Right, and you should know more or less off the top of your head the position of the sun on your model. You should know the compensation between different places.
Why? All I know is that the atmosphere that we are looking up through is probably more than 25 miles high. That's all I know, because that's as far as I've seen a helium balloon go up to. It seems as though the apparition of the sun is slightly higher than that. Maybe it's 30 miles high. Maybe it's 50 miles high. I don't know, because I can't measure that. I've never been able to do that. But the thing that you're saying,
this diagram here
is a good one.
This diagram method that Sly used shows that the difference in the position of the sun isn't tens of miles. It isn't hundreds of miles.
No, that's right.
It appears to be thousands of miles different.
See that thing, it's still working fine for me.
Yeah, it's just so annoying when it doesn't. I'm just gonna go internet. Internet decided to slow right down. I do hope that it, because I do hope that it picks back up though.
No, and now it's
Oh,
back.
here we go.
No, and then it's gone again. I'm back.
So whilst it's deciding to actually send information, whilst it's actually sending information out, yeah. So what I wanted to say to Flat Earth Aussie Jesus is, and it's gone back to 0. Oh, not quite. So what I wanted to ask is, why is it that it just so happens, like all these observations that we make, just so happen to conform to a ball Earth? Like it conforms.
Do they though? Do they?
It conforms perfectly to like these observations of the when we measure the angle of the sun. They always measure. They always work perfectly when we put it on when we map it to a globe Earth. But when we map it to a flat Earth, it comes up with completely different angles that don't match. That just don't match a flat Earth. However, on a globe Earth, they are all pointing in the same direction. They're basically parallel. However, on your flat Earth, when we map it to a flat Earth, they all come in at different directions. Do you want to explain?
Have you actually tested that and looked for yourself and seen
this is
if there is a sun going around the equator every day? Actually, still does conform quite well to a flat Earth.
I mean, this is what this video that I've got up on screen is showing. It's showing that when you've got when you map it to a flat Earth, it doesn't give any good results. Whereas if you map it to a globe, all the angles point in the same direction. Why is that?
I'm not saying the one that you're talking about, but all I can say is that you're possibly not taking into distance diminution, not taking into perspective, not taking into...
The angle wouldn't be that far out.
Like what? But why?
Sorry, was somebody trying to talk over?
I just want to know, why is it that it maps perfectly to a globe, and it maps it doesn't map very well to a flat Earth at all? Why do you have to come up with an excuse why it doesn't match to a flat Earth and when it matches to a globe perfectly?
Well, from what I can see, it's just the globe is actually back engineered against the true reality of the flat Earth.
Why?
To try and to conform to what they want it to be.
But why does it match so perfectly with reality? Like if the globe is a complete lie, why would it match so perfectly with reality? Usually when something is a lie, there's usually a whole lot of little usually like glaring issues with it. However, when the globe
well, you tell me then where you've ever seen standing bodies of water curving.
Well, with
Lake Pontchartrain.
I mean, I can bring up this image here.
I've got images of Lake Pontchartrain that shows it's completely flat and level right across the whole entire. You need to do better than that.
I mean, I suppose I could bring up the Himawari set.
Yeah, that's another CGI generated thing that only gathers data from a whole range of weather satellites or weather radars.
Like, how much data do you think it would need? How much data do you think it would need?
I'd just like to see.
How much
I'd
data?
just like to see something that shows, say between Australia and New Zealand. Say we could send a satellite up far enough, and we see an image of ships going across this curvature, planes following that, something that was real, and
it'd be tiny.
Say, okay.
Like
you are failing to understand the scale involved.
Like, no matter whether the Earth is...
Here's the Himawari image. Here's the Himawari image. Why can't that zoom in and ships floating upside down?
Like, because
the resolution of the camera doesn't allow that.
Yeah, it's like they'd be really tiny.
How convenient. How convenient.
No. You're asking for something that's hundreds of meters long, be shown on at the same time as the curve on an object tens of thousands of kilometers across.
How many?
Tens of thousands of kilometers across.
4,000 miles is how?
Like, it wouldn't even be like this is a huge image, but
4,000 miles is the radius of the Earth.
Yep.
but
Sorry, I overestimated slightly.
like the diameter of the Earth
12
is still
to 13
12.
kilometers across the diameter.
12, 13,000.
Roughly.
Yeah, like you've got a huge Earth here, and you're wanting to see something that, like, what's the
Well,
scale?
there should be something in between, you know. There should be something in between. If it's possible of showing us an image like this, then where is something in between?
Something from the ISS, maybe?
The ISS is only 450 kilometers.
I've got a website that links to images of a film series that was taken in 1947, if that's any help.
If you want to,
Again, it's
A
in
bit
the.
more modern would be nice, but, you know.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to pick something that.
In World War II era, that's fine.
I'm trying to pick something that cannot be CGI.
Okay.
by the way, if you want, like,
It's in the voice text if you want to put it up.
by the way, like, if we, continue.
Camera shots taken from a modified V in 1947.
So what I want to say is that when it comes to, like, if we assume that that the size of the Earth in pixels is 8K, right? Just say this is an 8K image, then 100 meters would only be like wouldn't even be a tenth of a pixel. So you wouldn't expect to see things like planes or anything like that.
You wouldn't expect to see anything
Okay,
man-made.
so where's the Northern Hemisphere?
What?
Where's the Northern Hemisphere?
Nominally up.
Where's New Guinea?
There's-
Where's India?
India's
Where's
over.
Asia? Where's
It's like
It's an image. It's an image taken from roughly above Japan. So
Okay, where's
some of
Japan?
those. If you give me a second to get the live. No. If you give me a moment to get the live version up, because I've got some that gives me a slightly different view with continent outlines.
I've got the live. Like, on the live version, I've actually put it to be over India and China, but it might take a while to get there because actually, if you refresh, it should be over China, India, and all that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it should.
Like if you've got the live version up, you can literally see India.
So, broadly speaking, what you've got at the top of the image, the landmass that you can see there, is basically China with Russia as the very top of the limb of the Earth there.
Okay, so no North Pole?
No, because the North Pole is just the other side of the curve. Or very
Right,
much,
so at the bottom we'll see the south.
or is exactly on the top of it.
So you're saying at the bottom we'll see
The bottom, you could, if there wasn't the cloud cover there, you could just see the edge of Antarctica.
Oh, I can actually see the edge of Antarctica.
Yeah, Australia is pretty much square
My
on.
screen must be frozen, I can't see it.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I can't see them.
Okay.
If you
like,
come down, that's Australia there,
yeah.
in the roughly a quarter of the way up.
Yeah, what I do want to sort of end off the stream. So what I will say is that hopefully one day they send up a satellite which much better image quality. Maybe can see individual people, right? And then Flat Earth Aussie Jesus will be able to walk outside and wave to the satellite, and we'll be able to, zoom up on Australia and be like, oh, look, there's Flat Earth Aussie Jesus waving to the satellite. And then we'll have proof that that there's satellites. How does that sound, Flat Earth Aussie Jesus?
Yeah, mate, this is the most ridiculous sort of stuff I've ever seen. Australia isn't red like that. This is just crazy. I can't believe you guys actually fall for this absolute baloney.
I mean, it's...
Do you have any photos of the flat Earth from above?
Not the falling from...
I think my internet crashed for a second there. Is everyone back?
I can still hear you.
Every photo we have is a flat photo. When you're looking at these fake images, this is compilations of different weather channels putting their stuff together.
Which would take ages. It would take ages to do to be able to put something together. I'd say
minutes with today's technology.
I'd say that it would take ages to do to compile all this data into something, and you got to consider like what I'd actually like to do is I'd like to take a flight, from New Zealand to Australia or vice versa, filming out the side of a plane and then match that to the weather that we see on the Himawari satellite. I'd like to see how well it matches up.
Well, how else do you think they get their technology? They're just taking it off planes with their radar and saying, oh yeah, well this is where some clouds are, so we'll put this into our...
And how would a plane get its...
that we're doing?
Like, how would a plane get its data, like, all the time to... You gotta consider, like, this would be a phenomenal feat. Like, if they could pull this off, this would be, like...
Well, how else do they get things like GPS and whatnot? Isn't that all in real time?
They use satellites. You'd have to have so many weathering stations.
This will be something I'd love to leave you with.
Okay.
How can you explain how satellites can actually work? On a spinning ball that is hurtling through space, forget our rotational speed, that's only 1.35 times the speed. But the orbital rate is about 86 times the speed of sound.
I mean, the satellites
so a satellite in free fall is just going to keep up with this as it's sometimes
they're caught in the gravity well of the Earth.
Yeah, I've heard a debate between Flat Earth Aussie Jesus and someone else on gravity wells, and Flat Earth Aussie Jesus refused to accept that gravity wells exist. So I think I'll end up the stream here.
I don't think there is such a thing as a gravity well.
Because otherwise,
you're talking about an Earth spinning around a sun flying through space at about 670 times faster than the speed of sound as well.
All right, so
you think these satellites are just wafting around us at free fall speed?
So I'm gonna end up the stream after the stream we can still continue to debate, but this is I'm just gonna end up the stream because internet's turned into shit and all that, and don't want to have a period where it's just complete where I can't
garbage.
Yeah. All right, so leave a like and subscribe if you like the stream. Leave a comment letting me know what you'd like me to do for future streams. I'm always, but yeah, I feel like there's something else I could say, but I don't know. Stay safe from the coronavirus because that's going around. Keep everyone safe, and I will see you in the next stream. Between you and me, thank you for watching.